drained all the bank accounts, and I filed immediately, and she left prior to getting served.
Did you take money out of a joint account? So you lied and made a false statement.
First-hand knowledge is, if I could continue.
No, he did not tell me he had filed.
He makes up fake things.
In today's case, a 57-year-old pyrotech moved to California in February 2023. His 72-year-old wife followed a few months later. But while she was there, things fell apart. She drained their joint bank account and drove back to Tennessee, and he filed for divorce. Now she's in court trying to convince the judge he never really moved, hoping to keep the case and the law on her turf.
Court has one case before today. It's Carrie Knopfsinger versus Reed Knopfsinger. And there are several motions, one of which is the motion to declare service, a motion to spousal support, motion for temporary division of marital debt, motion for possession of the marital residence, and motion to sell the vacation property. I've also just been handed a notice of filing that Mrs. Knopfsinger has given notice that there is a case pending in California court, and that it gives the presiding judicial officer and a telephone number. I'm assuming. Turn your microphone on the table, if you will.
Yeah, guys. Your Honor, just by giving you some history of this case, Mr. and Ms. Knopfsinger were residents of the state of Tennessee, owned property here in Dixon County, and also are property owners of a vacation home on the lake in Henry County. Mr. Knopfsinger relocated to the state of California, and in November, he filed a divorce in the state of California in Los Angeles County on an irreconcilable differences divorce. Of course, the state of California is a no-fault divorce state, unlike the state of Tennessee. California is a community property state, unlike the state of Tennessee, where we have a common law property state. He filed that divorce. My client had gone out and visited for a period of time in California with no intentions of relocating, and Mr. Knopfsinger filed the divorce in the state of California. And again, according to the pleadings, he had only been there for 5 months and 2 weeks. California requires, as Tennessee does, a 6-month residency requirement. And in the filing that he made, he actually, in the divorce filing that he made, he clicked that both he and the respondent have been residents of the state for at least 6 months and of this county for at least 3 months. And of course, it's our position that that is a perjurious statement that he has made to the California court, that my client, he still possesses, or did up until after the filing of the divorce. He did not possess a California driver's license. He possessed a Tennessee driver's license. And my client has always possessed that, and they've lived here for a period of time. They did relocate here, and they've been living here and own the property. They moved here in 2020, Your Honor. The scenario being is that there's an issue of jurisdiction to be raised in the state of California, and there's also an issue of service. Mr. Knopfsinger, through an attorney that he no longer has in the state of California, has alleged that Mrs. Knopfsinger was served. She was actually not in state when the private process server alleged to have served her, and the paperwork was found after being rained on, where it had been just laid on her porch here in Charlotte. She wasn't even in town at the time. So we have retained counsel in the state of California, and she has filed to contest jurisdiction out there and to contest service. And they are in the process of doing that. We filed the divorce. He filed in November. We filed in December. We had a number of service attempts made in the state of California. It's our position that he avoided process and in fact lied to the process server and did not disclose who he was. At that point in time, Mr. Justin Walker had reached out to me and stated that he had been retained by Mr. Knopfsinger. I requested Mr. Walker, would he accept service of process? Because in the meantime, I had filed a motion for service by publication. Mr. Walker emailed me back and said absolutely he would accept service. I forwarded the documents to him, and then Mr. Walker never executed or signed the acceptance of service. I repeatedly tried to communicate to find out if he was going to serve it, The testimony will show that Mr. Knopfsinger was communicating with his wife, Mrs. Knopfsinger, who's here in the court, stating that that was just a ruse to delay and that he had directed his attorney not to accept service. At that point in time, we proceeded with the motion for service by publication, but then in the meantime, Mr. Walker filed a response objecting to jurisdiction in this court. That was he did not enter a special appearance when he filed that document. So at that point in time, I filed the motion to declare that he was served because Mr. Walker had filed a responsive pleading to that. Mr. Walker then reached out to me and returned to me the notice of acceptance, which I have now filed with the court after I filed my motion to declare he served.
Did he execute the return of service?
He did. Mr. Walker executed on behalf of his client, and that should be in the file. So that renders my motion to declare him served moot because his attorney accepted service. So once I filed that, then I proceeded to file my pendante-like motions that are before the court. A motion for spousal support, and correspondingly or alternatively, a motion for division of the marital debts, a motion for exclusive possession of the marital residence, and a request to go on and place the vacation home, which is the house on the lake in Henry County. We wanted to go on and get permission to sell that. Yesterday, I received from counsel a motion to strike all of mine motions, pending on the ruling in California as to whether or not California had jurisdiction. It is not disputed, Your Honor, that he filed first in California. What is disputed is that he had not been a resident of California, or she had not been a resident of California at all, and that there is no in rem jurisdiction in California to dispose of real property in the state of Tennessee. It's our position that these parties are property owners in the state of Tennessee, that the facts that led to the divorce occurred in the state of Tennessee, and that Tennessee is the proper venue to proceed on the divorce. And when I got the motion to strike, I communicated with Mrs. Knopfsinger's attorney in the state of California and got the requisite information for Your Honor to, if Your Honor is inclined, to contact the California judge and for y'all to make a determination on which is the appropriate forum. It's not like under the UCCJA if you had children involved, but still it's an issue of in personam jurisdiction and in rem jurisdiction that both courts have to determine.
You have a response?
Yes, Your Honor, if I may. May I press the podium?
You may.
And I apologize, Judge, I know you want us to, but I have, with my hip surgery, it's easier for me if with
I don't have any
permission.
problems unless you're questioning a witness,
Yeah.
with you remaining there. As long as the microphone's turned on, there shouldn't be a problem.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Well, thank you, Your Honor, and nice to meet you. My name is Attorney Michael Talley. I am not attorney of record for Mr. Knopfsinger. That is Mr. Justin Walker. I am here in his stead this morning, and we'll try to attack this in parts here. Number one, we're going to address the situation regarding Mr. Knopfsinger's appearance today, Your Honor, obviously. The threshold issue in this situation seems to be whether or not the court should and could rule on the motions that were filed by opposing counsel due to the dual jurisdictions that have attached here in this situation, Your Honor. Mr. Walker filed yesterday with the court, as opposing counsel indicated, a response which indicated case law and also common law that supported the argument that at the very least these motions that were filed by opposing counsel need to be stayed, and at the very most need to be quashed and dismissed entirely, Your Honor. I'm sure the court is well aware of the prior suit pending doctrine. It's not anything new. I'm sure opposing counsel knows about that as well.
Let's say that husband and wife live in the state of Texas or the state of Tennessee. We'll just say the state of Tennessee. He relocates to California and one day later files a complaint for divorce. Then the wife files 2 days later a complaint for divorce in Tennessee. Who has jurisdiction?
I guess that would be a fact-dependent situation, Your Honor.
I understand, that's the very issue that's before the court. Let's assume that California rules that they have jurisdiction. And I determined that they don't have jurisdiction because, in my opinion, Tennessee was the home state of these parties when they separated at the time of their divorce, based on evidence presented to me. Then what? They say they have, I say they don't. I say we've got it.
Your Honor, those are the hard questions that the court has to
They are hard
tackle every
questions.
day.
The mere fact that a complaint is filed in another state does not mean that that robs us of jurisdiction to hear these matters. But I've got to make that determination, and then I will determine whether or not that it's necessary for me to confer with this other judge, whether it's necessary for me to delay this hearing. But I want to deal with the jurisdictional issue first and foremost.
He was going to put on proof.
It's his motion to dismiss, so we'll allow him to go first.
Yes, sir.
Or is his motion to objection to jurisdiction and a motion to stay. If you want to offer any proof on your motion to dismiss or quash the motions and to delay pending the California jurisdiction, if you want to put on your proof, I'll allow you to do so, and I've allowed Mr. Knopfsinger to testify by remotely. He'll need to turn on his camera if he chooses to do so. Mr. Knopfsinger, if you're going to be called as a witness, you must turn on your camera, please.
Yep, let me figure it out. There we go.
All right.
May I, Your Honor?
You may proceed. Oh, first of all, Mr. Knopfsinger, let me place you under oath. Mr. Knopfsinger, you have been asked to testify under oath in this court, so I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand. Let me place you under oath. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Now, you are a party. You can put your hand down now. You're a party to this proceeding in the sense that you have filed pleadings in this court submitting to the jurisdiction of the court. Now, whether this court has or has not got the proper jurisdiction to hear your divorce case is not the issue about that. But you understand that by testifying in this court, you're subjecting yourself to the jurisdiction of this court as a witness.
Yes.
All right. Then you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, could you state your name for the record?
Reed Allen Knopfsinger?
And you are married to Carrie Knopfsinger currently, is that correct?
Correct.
And what is your current address?
Boulevard, Los Angeles, California, 90046.
And how long have you maintained residency at that particular address?
I moved to this address in July of 2023. I have a lease, and it's up this year in July on the 15th.
And I guess, have you maintained ownership of that residence consistently since July of 2023?
Yeah, I rent this place.
Okay.
I moved out here in February of 23.
So you moved out there in February of 2023. So how were you maintaining your residency or lodging at that point? Did you have a different address?
Yeah. Prior to that, I was staying with my current landlord at his house in his pool house in the back.
Okay.
That was on Doheny Drive in Los Angeles.
So you arrived in Los Angeles on February of 2023.
Correct.
Have you maintained your residency? Well, let me ask another question. At any point after February of 2023, did you leave the jurisdiction of Los Angeles, California for an extended period of time?
I traveled 2 months at the end of 2023 with Roger Waters to go on tour in South America. So what I do for a living is I tend to travel from time to time. But prior to that, I was only gone maybe a week here and there touring around the country. But that was my only major time I was gone. That was about 6 weeks I was gone.
So you spoke on your job just now. Can you explain to the court the extent of your travel throughout a calendar year so they have a better understanding of how much you're moving about?
Prior to moving to Los Angeles, I probably was traveling 200 days a year. After moving to Los Angeles, I took over the operations at our office in Los Angeles. So my responsibility to travel got quite significantly smaller. So I don't travel as much anymore. This year, I've only traveled once. Last year, I think I traveled 3 times.
So when is the last time that you made a trip to the state of Tennessee?
That would have been in May of 2024 when I packed up the moving truck and moved all our belongings out here, and we listed both our houses for sale.
And in May of 2024, when you came to the state of Tennessee to initiate your move, how long were you there for?
Probably about a week. It took me a while to pack the truck. I had to do it by myself, so.
And after all the packing was done in May of 2024, you made your way immediately back to California, is that right?
Yeah, I rented a van on May 21st, and we took off May 22nd to drive out here with our dog and cat. The houses were listed for sale, and it took us about 2.5 days to get here. So I think we got here around the 24th or 25th of May.
And when you say we, who is it that you're speaking about?
Me and Carrie.
So in May of 2024, you and Carrie made your way back to California to move. How long was it that Miss Knopfsinger resided with you in California from May of 2024?
I think she left on or around November 11th, November 10th. She put the dog and the cat in her car, and drove back to Tennessee. That was 2024, 2024.
Okay, so you testified earlier that in February 2023 was when you began residing in California. So were you and your wife living apart throughout that whole period before you came back to Tennessee and made a move?
Yeah, she would fly out once a month. That was a deal I had with my company. So she would come visit once a month. I had the right to fly back there once a month, but I was very busy out here. So I probably only flew back 1 or 2 times in that calendar year. And she flew out here more.
And you think the frequency with which she came to California was around once a month?
Yeah, it was about once a month.
What was the length of a usual stay when she would fly to California?
3 or 4 days. It wasn't a long period of time.
And is it true that you filed for divorce against your wife on November 12th of 2024?
That's correct.
Did you hire an attorney to assist you in this action?
Yes, I did.
Have you had a chance and an opportunity to review your California divorce petition with your California attorney?
Yes.
Are all the averments that you made in that petition true and accurate to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, to the best of my knowledge.
So, to your knowledge, was your wife ever served with this petition?
Per the service company, yes, she was.
So you utilized a private process serving company to serve her?
I didn't. The attorney did.
Okay, I understand.
So, Your Honor, again, I would object to that as being hearsay then.
Would appear to be hearsay unless you establish a basis for knowledge.
Okay. So I'm going to strike that question, Mr. Knopfsinger.
Question is stricken.
Do you remember ever providing to your attorney in California funds to acquire a private process server to serve your wife?
Yes.
Had you ever spoken to your wife about her being served with this petition from California?
No, she called and just mentioned after the fact that she hadn't, and said that she had flown the day that she was to be served to Chicago. So I think my attorney asked her for proof of the plane flights, and that's kind of where that ended.
And again, Your Honor, I would ask that be stricken as hearsay.
Sustained.
Yeah, Mr. Knopfsinger, I appreciate your testimony and your candor, but we can't speak on what somebody else said that's not actually with us. But
Okay.
like I said, no big deal at all, though. Are you aware whether or not Ms. Knopfsinger has retained counsel in California for your divorce case?
Yes.
So she has, to your knowledge?
Yes. She has. Yes.
You guys have a hearing coming up on that California divorce in May, is that correct?
Correct.
To the best of your knowledge and recollection, can you explain to the court what you believe that hearing in May is about?
The hearing in May is about jurisdiction. The hearing in May is about service, and that's what it's about.
Were you ever provided any sort of documentation or certification that showed that your wife was served with the California petition?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately what the date is, or what the date was that your wife was served with the California divorce petition?
Well, again, Your
I do
Honor,
not recall off the top of my head.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
going to object. Sorry,
Go ahead.
Your Honor, I'm going to object as to hearsay unless. I don't.
Repeat your question.
My question was whether or not he remembered approximately what the date was that she was served, because she just testified that he has seen documentation that showed that she was successfully served.
Well, you're
Yeah,
still.
I would.
Hold on, Mr. Knopfsinger, I've got to deal with this. The objection is to, it's hearsay, and basically what you're saying is you're asking him to verify that he saw documentation to indicate that she was served on a specific date. That documentation would be hearsay. It's a statement made outside of court, introduced to prove the truth of the matter asserted therein, and therefore, in my opinion, it would be a backdoor way to try to get hearsay in, so I sustain the objection.
Understood, Your Honor, and I'll strike that question. Mr. Knopfsinger, do you have a California driver's license?
Yes.
Are you aware of the date of issuance of that California driver's license?
I don't have the actual physical date, no.
Do you believe that you've had the California driver's license for at least 6 months?
Yes.
Do you believe you've had a California driver's license for at least a year?
No.
Does the California driver's license that you have and currently maintain have your current residential address on there?
Yes.
And what was that address again?
I mean, I also pay taxes out here, if that matters.
You do, huh? You just get done with that?
I have my return from last year that I did, and then this year, because of the fires, it's been delayed.
So you filed taxes in California for 2 working years?
Correct.
Mr. Knopfsinger, do you have any vehicles, cars?
I do. Yeah, I have 2 cars in Tennessee and 1 car out here.
Is the car in Tennessee, what kind of car in Tennessee is it that you have?
I have a pickup truck out there, and I have a Mercedes-Benz out there in Tennessee.
What kind of car is it that you have in California?
I have a SL 550 Mercedes.
And is that Mercedes currently registered in California?
Negative. It's currently registered in Tennessee.
How long have you had that car out there with you in California?
I bought it in March of 2023.
And could you indicate to the court what the name of the company is that you work for?
Strictly FX.
And they have been your employer for the entirety of your residency in California?
Yeah, I've been employed with them since 1999.
And part of the reason you moved to California was to continue your employment with this company, correct?
Correct, to try to stop the traveling.
Do you have any funds invested in any California-specific banks?
Not specific banks, no. It's just Bank of America, just a U.S. bank. I opened that account when I lived in Illinois. It's been open ever since.
And you having residency in California, you have utilities that are all in your name as well?
No, my utilities are paid through my lease. My landlord has utilities in his name.
Okay, understood. And for the current lease you have for the place that you're renting, is it a yearly renewable lease or is it something other than that?
The first lease that I have right now is 2 years. It's up July 15th. And I'm trying to decide if I'm going to stay or if I'm going to move to a new residence. So yes, he has offered to let me stay, and I'm still deciding on if I can afford to stay.
So I know you're trying to decide whether or not you want to stay or not, but regarding your intentions on where you want to live, do you plan on still living in California?
Correct.
And do you plan on returning to Tennessee to legally reside at any time in the foreseeable future?
No, I do not.
Those will be my questions, Your Honor. At this time, I'll pass the witness. Thank you, Mr. Knopfsinger.
Mr. Knopfsinger, Ms. Roberts, representing your wife, is able to ask you some questions on cross-examination.
Okay.
Mr. Knopfsinger, where are you physically located right now? Are you in your home? Are you at your office? Where are you?
I'm in my home in Los Angeles, California.
And who is there with you?
Nobody.
You're home alone?
Yeah.
Okay. And nobody's in the room with you?
No.
Your California attorney is not online listening to this?
Negative. No. My attorney is on the other side of the hill. He's about 30 miles away.
Okay, but nobody's there. You haven't got anybody online listening. Nobody's telling you what to say. You're simply
Negative.
there. Is that correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Knopfsinger, you work for, what is the company name?
Strictly FX.
And how long have you worked for Strictly FX?
Since December of 1999.
And what position did you and do you hold with Strictly FX?
Well, when I was first hired, I kind of did everything. I ran the office. I made gear. I fixed things. Jack of all trades when I started. Currently, right now, I'm a senior account manager for Strictly FX in Los Angeles.
And what is your rate of pay?
I am on a flat salary of $150 or $140 a year.
Between 140 and 150 flat salary?
Yeah, I think it's 140, but it could be 150. I'm pretty sure it's 140.
If you could, how do you get paid? A direct deposit?
Direct deposit.
Okay. And that's
I also get a stipend for living here, like a California cost of living increase. So that pays me $5,000 a month as well on top of that 140 salary.
Okay, so you get 140 plus an additional 5,000 a month for a stipend to live in California.
Correct. Cost of living. Yeah.
Okay, and how do you get that? How do you get that paid?
Direct deposit. Everything's direct deposit.
Account.
Yeah, it goes right into my checking.
Okay, and you've worked for them, and in 2020, where did you live prior to y'all moving to the state of Tennessee? Did y'all move?
Elgin, Illinois.
Okay, so y'all lived in Illinois, and then you and your wife in 2020 moved to the state of Tennessee, correct?
I moved first. I was in Tennessee for about a year, and then she followed.
And y'all own two properties, one, your primary residence that was here in Dixon, Tennessee, Dixon County, correct?
We owned 3 homes there. We sold one after I moved out here, and then there's still 2 more left.
Okay. But when y'all moved here and started living here in 2020, where was you, did y'all purchase 3 homes at that point in time?
We had a house in Cumberland Furnace that I had purchased, and we lived there for a moment in time, and then we purchased the adjoining farm, which is currently, we still own, which is in Charlotte.
Okay. And that's where Miss Knopfsinger lives, is that correct?
Correct. That's where she currently resides, to the best of my knowledge.
And then y'all had what we would call around here, a lake house out in Henry County, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then you sold the house in Cumberland Furnace when?
Correct.
When?
That was the beginning of 2024. I think it closed January or February.
And so that was the property you said when you left, that you had sold it prior to this packing up and moving in
Yeah, we sold it just before we packed her up and brought her out here.
Okay.
Yeah, we had all 3 houses going on the market. So that was the first one to go.
Okay, so it's your testimony under oath that there's a listing agreement for the Henry County property too?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What agency did you list that with?
That I'm not sure of.
Okay.
But Charlotte was listed and Henry County, maybe. Yeah, Henry County. Maybe it wasn't listed. I take that back. But I know for a fact Charlotte was.
Not disputing that. I ask you specifically, you've testified under oath multiple times now, that all 3 properties were listed. Y'all sold the one in Cumberland Furnace.
Mm-hmm.
You said the Henry County property was listed for sale. That's not a true statement, is it, sir?
I don't recall.
I don't know what holding up hands and leaning back.
I don't recall. I just know that we talked about listing all 3 houses. If that one was not listed, Then it was not listed. Charlotte was for sure listed, and so was the other one. I have documentation for that. So I may have been mistaken on Henry County.
Back to the payroll. You get paid automatic deposit. When you went out to California, your job was, you traveled quite a bit with your job, correct?
Correct.
Your testimony earlier is that you were typically gone 200 days a year.
Correct.
And that was whether you were in Illinois or whether you were here in Tennessee, correct?
Correct.
And at some point in time, your company reached out to you and offered you and says, if you'll come stay out in California, we'll give you a $5,000 stipend, correct?
Negative. No, not true.
How did that come to fruition?
That came after I already lived here for 3 months, and they figured out that it wasn't cutting it for my expenses because it was very expensive to live here.
And again, the payroll that you get when you signed up as a Tennessee resident, didn't you? Through your company, you're listed that you're a resident of the state of Tennessee, aren't you, sir?
Negative. I'm a resident of Los Angeles. I pay taxes here. I have for the last 2 years.
Well, do you pay the California income tax?
Absolutely.
And you have sent for 2023 and 2024?
You are correct.
Okay. Well, would you be interested to know that you filed your federal income tax in 2023 jointly with your wife?
I sure did.
Would you be interested to know that 2023 taxes listed you as a resident of the state of Tennessee?
It did, but I also lived here. I was just a resident there longer than I was in Los
I
Angeles.
didn't ask that, sir.
Your client has counsel present, and this case was set for 9 o'clock. When Mr. Walker arrives, he can replace you or sit at the table with you, and the two of you can try this case together. I'm not going to recess the hearing to allow him to appear, but he can get here when he gets here, and we'll let him pick it up.
Sir, you filed your federal income tax in 2023, was filed jointly with your wife, and it listed you as a Tennessee resident, correct?
Correct.
And did you file a separate California return?
Correct.
Okay. And what did you list as your residence on your California return? Tennessee, wasn't it?
Do not recall.
You don't recall. Okay.
Mm-mm.
Is your state income tax deducted out of your payroll check?
Yes.
And so when you filed your California return listing your address as the state of Tennessee, did you get a refund through the state of California?
I don't understand the question.
Did you get a refund from the state of California when you filed your California income tax return?
Do not recall.
And your driver's license, let's talk about that just a minute. You're at your house and you don't have access to your driver's license?
I never said that.
So you do. Where is your driver's license? Right this, as we're speaking, where is your driver's license?
Sitting in my living room.
Okay. So if you went and got that, it would be interested to know that the issuance date was December of 2024, after you filed your divorce in California on November. Isn't that correct, sir?
I don't recall. I'd have to look.
Well, what did you have to do to go get your driver's license in the state of California, Mr. Knopfsinger? Did you have to just go to, like we do here, have to go to the driving testing center?
I just got it reinstated. I've had a driver's license in the state of California since I was 15.
Well, when did you get it reinstated?
I don't recall the date.
Well,
I just went and got it reinstated.
what did you have to do to get it reinstated?
Walk in the door and show him my passport.
You showed him your passport?
Mm-hmm.
And so did your passport list your residence in California?
Passport doesn't list your residence. It's in pencil if you want to write it on there.
Okay. So what did you do to prove your residence of California out there?
Gave him my lease.
Gave them your lease, and you don't remember doing that in December of 2024 after you filed in November?
I don't recall.
You still have possession of your Tennessee driver's license?
I do not think I do, no.
But you do have a valid Tennessee driver's license? Did you turn it back in? Or do you know when it becomes invalid, when the last
I do
time
not
for you
know.
to a Tennessee driver's
No.
license?
I have a California driver's license. I don't really concern myself with Tennessee anymore.
Well, I understand that, but you didn't concern yourself with Tennessee only after you filed for divorce.
Negative. I've lived here for 2 years. I've lived here since February of 23.
Well, why did you file it in 2023? Why did you file a tax return with the federal government saying you were a resident of the state of Tennessee?
Because I was there longer than I was in the state of California. And that's the law. If you're there longer than 6 months, you have to file where you've been longer than 6 months.
See,
That's why.
I
That's
thought-
federal law.
Well, thank you for your legal expertise, but you said you moved there in February of 2023, correct?
Correct. Yes.
So the January, you would agree with me, is the first month of the year, correct?
Of any year? Yes.
And then the calendar year, and then you moved in February, and so you would agree there's 12 months in a year.
Yes.
And so you were in the state of California, if my math is correct, 11 months, correct?
Of 23? Correct.
And on the last day of the month of 2023, it's your testimony that you were a resident of the state of California, correct?
Correct.
Are you a registered voter, sir?
Negative.
Never been?
Never been.
Okay, you're not registered in the state of Tennessee and don't have a voter registration card.
Nope.
And you haven't filed your taxes for 2024?
Negative.
It's because you said, well, I filed my taxes for the last 2 years, is what your testimony has been before this court.
All my information is with my tax attorney. We have a stay due to the fires out here.
Not questioning that,
File
sir,
when
but
it gets
you said
back.
for the past 2 years, you have filed your taxes in the state of California. We know that that's untrue because you filed your taxes with the state of Tennessee in 2023. Where did you file in 2022? Tennessee?
2022 would have been Tennessee.
Okay. So you lied and made a false statement saying that your last 2 taxes were filed in the state of California. Isn't that correct?
No. I turned all my taxes into my attorney. You're just trying to trick me.
You turned them into your attorney in California, or you turned them into your attorney here in Tennessee?
California. All my tax records are with my tax representative.
Okay, your attorney, well, again, you've said 2 different things, Mr. Knopfsinger. You said you turned it over with your tax preparer, and then you said your attorney has all your tax records. Can you?
My attorney also has my tax records out here just in case he needs them. That's correct.
But you haven't, it's true that you haven't filed in California for the past 2 years. Isn't that correct?
Well, I'm not sure I understand it, so I'm going to overrule the objection and just try to clarify. Ms. Roberts, are you questioning him about California tax returns? Or are you talking about federal tax returns? If you could distinguish between the two so that we know which ones you're asking him about.
Mr. Knopfsinger, you understand that you have an obligation to file both because if you earn money in California, you file a state tax return, correct?
Yes.
And then you file a federal tax return, correct?
Correct.
And you've testified for the past 2 years you have filed in California, correct?
Negative.
You didn't say that?
Do not recall.
If your testimony said that you had filed for the past 2 years, that was an incorrect statement as far as it relates to a federal tax return, correct?
I have not filed for this year. I have turned in my tax paperwork to my tax preparer. So this year is currently unfiled.
And again, due to the California fires, the Internal Revenue Service extended your tax deadline in the state of California. But the truth is in 2023, you filed as a resident of the state of Tennessee for your federal tax return. And in 2022, you filed as a resident of the state of Tennessee for your federal tax return, correct?
Yes.
Now, did you in 2022 file a California state return?
Negative.
In 2023, did you file a California state tax return?
Yes.
In 2024, have you filed a state tax return for the state of California?
Currently not filed, just with my tax attorney.
The car that you are currently driving, what type of tag is on that vehicle?
Tennessee.
Tennessee state tag is on that. And that is a vehicle that was purchased in March of 2023, correct?
Correct.
And you purchased that car in the state of California, correct?
Correct.
And you flew to the state of Tennessee for the specific purpose of registering that vehicle with the state of Tennessee and receiving a license to operate that, a tag to put on that, and registration, listing your address as the property here in the state of Tennessee.
Per request by my wife, correct.
We have an objection. Hold on, Mr. Nossinger. It also has to do with residence and domicile. And obviously, if he buys a car in California but flies into Tennessee in March of 2024 to obtain tags for that car as a Tennessee resident, which is required in order to obtain a tag, someone who lives in Maine can't fly into Tennessee when they buy a car in Maine and buy a tag in Tennessee and then fly back and that be an effective. The laws in almost every state have a requirement that you obtain the tags on your vehicle within a certain period of time of you changing your residence from one state to another. And
30
as a
days.
result of that, I think it is relevant on the issue of domicile and residence. Overall, the objection.
So again, Mr. Knopfsinger, you buy a car in 2023 in California, fly here in 2023, register it, stating that you lived at the Charlotte address, and that's where your car is registered to, correct?
For insurance purposes, correct.
Well, for legal purposes. Correct? I'll rephrase it, Your Honor.
Any objection?
And so you got that tag issued in March of 2023. And are you familiar, sir, with how long in the state of Tennessee that a license tag is valid for?
Yes.
And how long is that?
1 year.
Okay. So if you got the first tag in 2023, you would have had to renew it in March of 2024, correct?
Correct.
And it was renewed in March of 2024, correct?
Correct.
And it was renewed and you did not make any change of address, correct?
Negative. It does now have my new address on it, and I have an issuance certificate with the new address.
Okay, in 2024, pay attention to what I'm asking you. In 2024, did you change your address on that?
Do not recall.
Okay. But then, we're in April right now. I think today's the
Correct.
17th of April. So your
Yes,
car
it is.
tag had to be renewed last month in the state of Tennessee, didn't it?
It is currently not renewed anywhere.
You didn't renew it in 2020, last month?
No, negative.
Pay for a new tag. So you're operating a vehicle without valid tags.
My tag expires in May, so I don't know where you received your
Okay.
information.
The objection is relevant, or is that what you're saying? Relevance?
He clarified it, Judge.
He clarified it, so we'll overrule the objection because it's been clarified by the witness.
So, Mr. Knopfsinger, I was just going on the proposition that you got it issued in March when you flew back and got it, and then it was.
Yeah, you're incorrect. So
Then
that's
I asked,
okay.
and I asked you if you renewed it in March of 2024, and you said,
Absolutely, I did not. Nope.
well, you first said you didn't recall.
It didn't get renewed in March, so I don't recall the date, but I guarantee you it was not March.
So, but you're saying now your tag and the Tennessee tag that you have on that vehicle right now doesn't expire until May of 2025.
Correct.
That's what you're-
Correct.
So it would have,
Correct. Yes.
so it would have had to been renewed from May of 2024.
I do not know.
Well, who would have done that?
I
Did
don't
your
know.
wife do it for you?
I
Oh,
do not recall who did it. I'd have to look that information up. I don't
Well,
have it
who
with
else
me.
other than your wife would have done that for you?
It would have been me or her.
Now, because of your job, when you got a place to live in California, you still had a Tennessee driver's license. Your vehicle was registered in the state of Tennessee. You filed taxes, and again, you don't have a recollection when you filed in 2023 your California state tax return. You don't know what you listed as your residence.
No, I do not. Not for the state of California's filing, no.
Right, but your attorney in California has that.
Correct.
At some point in time, it appeared that you were, I don't know if the word promoting or getting change of a position with this job with Strictly FX there in the state of California. Were you just going, did it end up that you were going to stay there? You testified during direct examination that you changed from traveling 200 days a year to being more of running the office there in California. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
No. I moved out here to try to stop traveling 200 days a year.
Okay. Well, at some point during your testimony.
As I'm getting older, so.
How old are you?
I'm 57 years old.
Okay. So you move, you go out there, you move out there, that's what your testimony is, and then at some point in time, you come back here in May of 2024, and it's your testimony, you pack up all of your belongings.
Correct.
And not furniture, furnishings, all that, or just your clothes and stuff?
Clothes, pictures, photographs, paintings, furniture, Peloton bike, you name it. The only thing left behind was the 2 couches that we didn't want, a coffee table, an end table, and 2 beds. The dining room set, everything else came.
So did y'all
And
put
then-
that in a U-Haul or something, or did you get a moving service?
It was a U-line moving truck. It was a 35-foot trailer.
And that y'all loaded up there in May of 2024, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Now, you testified that you thought it was, you left on May 22nd. Is that right?
Yes, I have rental receipts for the car. We left on May 22nd.
And it took you a couple days to go out there. If my client recalls that y'all got out there after Memorial Day.
No, we got out here on a Saturday, I believe it was.
Listen, I'm saying,
Hold on.
I'm going to object to that. That's not even a question.
Well, I don't think she finished it, but restate your question.
Okay. If
The
my,
objection will be considered as to the form of the question.
you've stated that you got out there sometime on the 24th or the 25th.
I can pull that exact date up because I have the hotel receipts and gas receipts. If you really need to know the exact date and time, I can pull that
Well,
up.
we will need to know those exact dates at some point in time. I'm just
No
asking.
problem.
I'm asking your memory, sir.
Yep,
And again,
left the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, arrived the 25th.
arrived the 25th. And
Correct.
where did y'all arrive?
We arrived here to the house at 8218 West Sunset Boulevard.
And you and your wife drove out there together?
Correct. Correct.
Didn't bring another car? Did you leave the other vehicles here?
Which ones? There's 1, 2, 3, 4 cars that were left there, correct?
Well, my question may be inartfully asked, is you and she drove in this U-Line van together?
Negative. We did not drive in the U-Line van. There was no U-Line van. That was a trailer that the moving stuff was packed into. That was just a big trailer. No truck,
Okay,
no
so
nothing.
you pulled the trailer.
Rented a van. Nope, I can't pull a 40-foot truck.
I'm,
I don't know where you're going with this, but
you
this
don't
was
have
a
to know, you just have to
40-foot
answer.
semi-truck trailer. This was not a
Did
tiny
you hire
little
somebody
trailer.
to move y'all's stuff, or did you transport it?
U-Line. U-Line was the name of the company. They transported it.
Okay, it was a
It
moving
had
company.
nothing to do with the transporting of the gear. Yes.
It was a moving company that moved your things, correct?
That moved the trailer itself, yes. They did not touch my
You and your-
possession.
And you and your
Yes.
wife drove in a vehicle out there, correct?
A van, a Dodge van, a blue Dodge van.
Did y'all rent that Dodge van, or was that a van?
Correct.
Okay.
Rented it.
Y'all didn't drive one of your vehicles.
Negative.
The vehicles that y'all have in the state of Tennessee stayed here in the state of Tennessee, correct?
You are correct.
You didn't pull one of the vehicles with y'all and didn't drive separately, correct?
Correct.
And y'all went out there, and then she, in November, and you said November 10th or 11th, she flew back here.
Nope.
Or did-
She did
you
not
drove-
fly. She drove her car that was shipped out here.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get to. How did her vehicle get out there? It didn't go with y'all in May.
No, because she made a mistake with the moving company that was supposed to move the vehicle, and they decided they weren't going to come pick it up. So she blew it off. So then I had to try to make arrangements later on. So the car got shipped out here about a month later.
About a month later, she had a vehicle out there then.
Correct.
And then in November, she drove back here.
Correct.
Did y'all have a falling out?
She removed a ton of money out of the bank.
Okay, and she found out about your extramarital affair.
I had no affairs with anybody.
That's not relevant to anything that we're doing today.
It goes to the issue of permanency, Your Honor. He's claiming that she moved out there permanently. The timing is essential as to when this supposedly happened and whether he moved earlier or later. And then was she just coming back to do something, or did they have a falling out and she moved back? That was the purpose of the question.
I'm going to overrule the objection, allow it for the limited purpose of establishing the permanency or the finality of any sort of changes in residence for either one of them.
I'll rephrase the question, sir. She left you and came back to Tennessee, correct? Y'all had a falling out for whatever purpose.
She
packed up.
removed a lot of money out of the bank account, drained all the bank accounts, and I filed immediately, and she left prior to getting served.
Okay.
That happened 5 days before she left.
Okay, so she takes money out of the account, you get angry,
Your Honor,
and you file for divorce.
I would object to relevance. What did his state of mind when he filed his divorce got to do with the jurisdictional issue?
You object to the characterization if he got angry?
No, I'm objecting to the relevance of his emotional state when he filed the divorce. We're trying to figure out whether or not it's valid or not due to him having residency in California.
I'll rephrase the question, Your Honor.
Sustain the objection.
So was it your understanding that y'all were packing up and moving and that y'all were both going to be residents in whatever date in May, beginning at the point in time when y'all moved your stuff out there in May, and with your testimony, the 25th of May, that you and she were no longer going to be residents of the state of Tennessee, and both of y'all were going to reside in the state of California? Is that right?
Yeah,
Y'all
correct. We had Charlotte up for sale. Yes. The house
And-
was up for sale there.
and so
So
the-
there was no plans on returning. We talked about keeping the Lakehouse as a place to visit. And that was it. We hadn't made our full decision on what to do with that house at the time.
Okay. But again, that was the intent in May, and specifically, if you left on the 22nd and got there on the 25th, your intent then was that was where you and she were going to live.
Correct.
And then y'all got into for whatever reason, got into an argument May, June, July, August, September, October, November. So again, June, July, August, September, October, sometime early November, y'all got into an argument and y'all separated.
I don't know if we got into an argument. There was
Well,
money
you got-
taken from the bank account. That was the end of that. There was really no argument about it.
And was it clear that her intent was not to stay in California with you?
No, that was not clear to me.
He doesn't, it's just speculation. He doesn't know what her intent was unless she told him.
I'll rephrase, Judge, that's correct.
Sustain the objection as to the form of the question.
Was there conversation that she was going back to Tennessee and
No.
not staying in California?
No,
She just got in a car and drove away with the dog and the cat? Didn't you say it was a dog and a cat?
I'm a little lost on where you're trying to phrase this. Are you trying to say that when she moved out here, she had no intention of staying? Or that in November, she decided she wanted to leave?
That's what I'm asking in November.
In November,
If your testimony is that you came back here in May and you and she had the intention of selling your house in the state of Tennessee and y'all both moving and living together in the state of California, that's what I've
Yes.
understood your testimony was.
yes, yeah. Yeah, the house went up for sale
And then
in
an event
Charlotte. She
happened in
moved out
November.
here.
And then an event happened in November that resulted in her getting in the car, taking your pets, and coming back to Tennessee.
Yes.
And again, was there discussion? Did she articulate her intent to you?
Your Honor, I would object, asked and answered. He already said he didn't know. They
He
didn't have
did.
a discussion.
I think the question, finish your question.
Was there any communication or intent that she was not going to stay in the state of California with you and that she was moving back to Tennessee?
Your Honor, I would object. That's vague.
Well, I think,
Yeah, I don't know.
hold on just a
To
second.
my knowledge, I don't remember there was a lot said.
You need to stop talking when I'm talking. The question is whether or not your client conveyed to him her intent to relocate back to the state of Tennessee on a permanent basis.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's a legitimate question. It goes to the issue of whether she was intending to maintain a residence in California or whether she was intending to relocate to the state of Tennessee. Overrule the objection. The question to you, Mr. Knopfsinger, is did your wife indicate to you when she left in November that she was intending to relocate to the state of Tennessee permanently?
No. No, she did not. I have an email stating that fact too.
You have an email stating what fact?
That she was just traveling back there because a tree fell on the house.
Oh.
That she had no intention on physically moving there. But I had already filed at that point, so it was moot to me.
I believe that's all, Your Honor.
Now, you have any redirect for this witness?
Briefly, Your Honor.
You'll come to the podium so we can see you better.
Thank you. Mr. Knopfsinger, you just testified that whenever your wife traveled back to Tennessee, it was due to, from what you believed.
Dane, he's your witness. Don't lead the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. To the best of your knowledge, why is it that your wife went to Tennessee in November of 2024? Initially, anyway.
Initially,
Yeah.
she said a tree fell on the house. And then she was angry. So I don't know the true reason. All I know is the email that I received.
Do you recall if you received this email before or after she was already gone?
It was after she was already gone.
When was it, to the best of your recollection? Do you recall obtaining the information that your wife planned to stay in Tennessee?
I didn't really care, so I don't think I got like a formal written that I'm staying here. I had already filed by the time she left. She removed money from the bank account, $126,000, and that was enough proof for me that this was done. So it was irrelevant to me. I didn't care if she stayed or came back. I wasn't going to be a part of this marriage any longer.
And so you just didn't care, so you didn't go out of your way to figure out whether or not she was coming back or not?
Nope.
And after some time went by and your wife didn't return, did you ever contemplate moving out of California for any reason?
Nope.
You said you had two residences in the state of Tennessee?
I had 3, currently have 2.
Okay. Do you know whether or not those properties are still listed to be sold?
They are not listed to be sold.
Why is that?
A tree fell on the house in Charlotte, and I don't know the status of the house. I don't speak to Carrie at all, period. Don't know what's going on. I heard it got repaired. I don't know why it's not on the market. I don't know. I'm assuming because she's living in it. The Lakehouse, I heard it had a flood in the bathroom. I don't know the status of that. I don't know anything. So I have no idea what's going on with any property out there. I do not speak with her.
You testified earlier that when you and your wife moved to California, you had, due to your understanding, full intention of selling those properties that were there in Tennessee?
Charlotte was on the market when we came out. It was physically on the market. And the Lake House, we were still trying to figure out, would we hold it as kind of a place to go back to once in a while if we felt like it.
Do you have any, well, strike that, Your Honor. Nothing further, Mr. Knopfsinger. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any recross?
If I could just speak, it's just one question. Mr. Knopfsinger, on your divorce complaint in the state of California that you filed, you stated your date of marriage was on 11/8 of 2014. We filed a divorce complaint here saying y'all were married in 2004. Which one of those is correct?
Depends on where you're asking it took place.
I would object to that, Your Honor. What difference does that make? It ain't got nothing to do with the price of the tea in China.
I just note, I'm just trying to clarify if mine
It is
was
outside the scope of,
Right.
of his redirect, so I'll sustain the objection.
Your Honor, and also if I just may make one last remark too, I think the court already made indication of this. For the specific purpose of this jurisdictional related hearing, my client's availing himself to the courts of Tennessee for that limited and special purpose, Your Honor.
Yeah.
I think your client has, well, that's an issue. You're after the fact asking that I consider his appearance for a limited purpose of contesting jurisdiction.
Yes, Your Honor, I believe a prior filing by Mr. Walker brings that same specific thing.
Mr. Walker's filed his acceptance of service of process, so I'm not sure exactly what that means. I mean, he's here before the court as properly having accepted service of process. He's filed a motion to dismiss these motions and to contest jurisdiction. But I don't see the reason why there would be a need to consider as for that limited purpose. I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that applies in this particular case. We're going to take our mid-morning recess for 15 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. All rise.
Walker, you join us. We're, I think at this point in time, we had concluded the testimony of Mr. Knopfsinger. Is that correct? And then do you have any other proof you wish to offer on this issue? We're right now talking about the jurisdictional issue only.
Yes, Your Honor. I would just like to make a few comments, and I would
Come
note,
to the podium if you will.
certainly.
I'm going to allow Ms. Roberts and her client to put on proof as well on the issue of jurisdictions. So.
Yes, Your Honor. And I understand this to be more of a procedural issue, although I do realize that it's quasi. Forgive me, I had to speed quite a bit to get here. Not an objection not an admission of guilt. However, so, I mean, Your Honor, first, I just want us to state that I understand this is a battle of the forms type scenario. I mean, this is exactly what Article 4, Section 1 of the United States Constitution reflects in the Full Faith and Credit Act of the United States of America. I do want to note that although I did appear on this, I did hear the testimony as I was driving here. I would say that Mr. Knopfsinger did appropriately in the standard, in the seminal case, Kane v. Kane, which I believe is a Supreme Court case. I did object to jurisdiction at the outset, or the beginning rather, of this proceedings. In addition to that, and I apologize for not being here, I just got this on the 9th. I had an order of protection earlier. But in addition, the Full Faith and Credit Act and a properly lodged objection as to venue pursuant to Kane v. Kane, I did file a timely motion to quash as the local rules are silent on the matter. So, and I believe case law also states that once that is done, it is then the burden of proof is shifted to counsel to craft a legal argument in opposition as to why it should not be quashed. I don't think I heard the testimony of Mr. Knopfsinger. Unfortunately, I didn't hear the plaintiff's testimony. However, what I heard were lots of questions of facts. They were not rooted in law or procedure. And if the Tennessee courts, I mean, we respect the jurisdiction of other counties, I mean, such as the standard of law as far as the first in filing doctrine goes. So, it's beyond me why, if that is the standard of Tennessee, we would not go beyond the even higher standard of respecting the jurisdiction of other states. I'm not saying this court for sure doesn't have jurisdiction. I'm saying that's a question for a case in California where it was filed first, Your Honor. And I think, to just...
I'll pose to you the same question that I asked
Certainly.
Cowan, and that is, that let's assume a factual scenario wherein husband who resides clearly in the state of Tennessee moves to California and one day later files a complaint for divorce against his wife. And 2 days later, the wife files a complaint for divorce in the state of Tennessee. Which state has the right to proceed on the issues that are present? Does that filing in California, when there is no jurisdiction based on the fact that there's no residency established, which is a question of fact, does that prevent Tennessee from being able to proceed on their case simply because he's filed a complaint earlier than she has?
Well, I would say, Your Honor, respectfully, in response to that, this court has broad discretion to do whatever it sees fit. That is why I cite the first to file doctrine of Tennessee as I do Article 4 of the United States Constitution. Both of those were made in contemplation of such issues. She could go, so could my client, could go to all other 48 states and file a divorce right now, and then you could ask the same question, and it would be just as valid, in my opinion. Which state gets to decide the factual issue of residency?
But the factual issue of residency is a factual issue that both this court and California are going to have to deal with and resolve in some fashion. My question has always been, is there any reason why, simply because of the first file thing, is there any reason that I cannot conduct this hearing to determine whether or not, in this court's opinion, the facts provided? Because I may agree with the court in California's ruling, or I may disagree with it. The fact that they filed first doesn't necessarily mean that this court is robbed of any jurisdiction. I understand the full faith and credit. I understand the principle of the first filing, but I'm of the opinion that this court has the jurisdiction, has the right to determine the issue of jurisdiction, regardless of whether or not California is also going to determine it, because that will later become an issue that this court and the California court may have to have a conference call on that issue. But today's hearing is about the factual basis on whether or not there is or is not jurisdiction with this court.
Yes, if I may, Your Honor, and please finish, I'm sorry. But if I may, so this is the point I would make as to that. Let's say this court decides that it does have jurisdiction here. And let's say California does also decide that it has jurisdiction here as well. There is a case set for next month, which, although I agree the court can do whatever it wants today, I do think that hearing is more appropriate for this issue, and it is before that court there. What plaintiff is seeking here today is essentially to liquidate property, which there's no children in this case. So, I mean, in reality, obviously fault's going to be at issue here because spousal support is also requested. To liquidate these properties, which is what's being asked, even if the court holds it in trust, that may be contrary to what the state of California were to hold as to the raise of this case, which may prohibit my client from a valid opportunity to buy these homes if he chooses so, to buy wife out, to give her spousal support. And then if the if this court makes this rule today, proceeds to their 3 pendente lite motions, and then the California case also decides that it has jurisdiction, and this court continues to disagree after already essentially adjudicating on material pieces of raised property here, then the estate of the marriage itself comes into play, and that's not in the best interest of either of these parties, because then we have battle of the forms in federal court and appeals and other ridiculousness. I think not only is it just, we have these doctrines for a reason. It's not, I'm not saying that the court has to necessarily apply that law, although I think it should, but that's sound law because it's good measure. So I think for such drastic temporary relief, when there's a valid jurisdictional question here and a properly lodged objection to jurisdiction, one, it'll certainly convolute the case because the California case next month may go, hey, we don't have jurisdiction. Answers the question of fact there. It's going to be a resource dump. It's going, if we just want to go into pure equity, they're both going to have to file, new lawsuits, get federal lawyers, and so on and so forth. And that'll just tie this up with interlocutory appeals and everything else.
I understand everything you're saying.
I know.
I understand the argument that you make, and perhaps you did not understand. My process right now is to determine factually whether or not this court has or does not have jurisdiction in this court's opinion. I will then address the issue of whether or not it's appropriate to proceed on these other motions, or whether to delay those motions, but having made a ruling on the jurisdictional issue that can then be conveyed to this California court for their consideration. There may come a point that if I make a finding of jurisdiction and California finds jurisdiction, and I find simply that their basis for finding jurisdiction is not warranted, nor is it lawful, that does not mean that just because he filed there first, that this court is robbed of jurisdiction. There are multiple cases in the state of Tennessee that clearly establish that if the requirements for residency in the state of Tennessee are met by the plaintiff at the time of the filing for divorce, it doesn't matter if there were other connections to other states or that one of the other parties resided in another state. I would simply also point you to Conley versus Conley, which is a 2005 opinion of the Court of Civil Appeals. Interestingly, it was written by Justice Lee before she went to the Supreme Court. Sharon Lee wrote the opinion, but in that case, the argument was made that the Tennessee had jurisdiction. The wife says, no, we lived in Florida. That's where we should be, that has all of the arguments about it. And the Court of Appeals held that Tennessee had jurisdiction because it goes on to talk about the reasons why. But that's why this is a factually driven issue. And therefore, we can argue about the legal niceties of the first filed argument, but it still boils down to, at some point, this court is going to have to make a decision on whether or not the facts support a finding of jurisdiction or whether or not there is not jurisdiction. And whether this court does it first or California does it first, it doesn't change the fact that California said we have jurisdiction, and I'm of the opinion that the evidence is they don't, then I'm not going to defer to California simply because they rendered an opinion first, nor do I expect them to defer to this court simply because of the fact that I made my decision first. Today's hearing is about the issue of jurisdiction only, and I'm going to allow Ms. Knopfsinger and her counsel to put on proof regarding that issue, and then I'll make a determination about the issue of jurisdiction. And then at that point, I'll make a decision whether or not to even go forward with any of these other motions. But it may be necessary for me to delay that or to reset those motions to allow, the California court to make its decision, and then we'll see where we are. But I'm going to make a determination today whether or not this court has jurisdiction.
And I certainly respect the court's opinion and position, as I must. I would just state that I do think that obviously you haven't ruled. I'm not saying I know what your ruling is, but I would say that it is a slippery slope for the truth to be bent, as it's
Well, I've been down a slippery slope on a lot of cases before. The
fair,
fact that it's a slippery slope doesn't...
Fair enough, Your Honor, but I will say that there is a general interest in the practice of law in general to avoid a lack of judicial economy and resources of citizens of all states.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, Your
Do
Honor.
you understand that I'm saying this hearing right now is only about the issue of jurisdiction?
Yes, and I just want to...
And that is a hearing that would have to be heard no matter what California does.
And I just want to be clear that my exact point is I do not think that this is necessarily the appropriate time.
And I overrule any objection you have to that,
That's fine.
so we'll proceed with this hearing.
Thank you.
Ms. Roberts, do you wish to put on any proof on the jurisdictional issue? All right. Call your witness. And if you'll come around here, and I'm going to ask you to step around here and raise your right hand and be placed under oath.
Carrie Knopfsinger.
Singer, where do you live currently?
6.
And that is located here in Dixon County, is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
correct? And how long have you resided at this?
Since May of 2020.
And prior to that, where did you reside?
6 Elgin, Illinois.
Okay. And did your husband reside in Illinois with you?
He did, but he lived in Cumberland Furnace also, part-time.
When were y'all married?
In September 4th, 2004.
He had filed, you have been provided through me and through your California counsel with a copy of the divorce complaint that he filed in the state of California on the 12th day of November of 2024. Is that correct?
Correct.
And on there, he lists that your date of birth was your date of birth, your date of marriage was January 8th of 2014.
He didn't tell the truth.
Objection to the question and the response.
I'm sorry?
Said objection to the question and the response. Relevance, and I object to the response.
What is the relevance, Ms. Roberts?
Well, the relevance is whether or not he has been truthful in,
No,
based on her.
no.
You'll let her
I could
finish her
finish, maybe.
response before you interrupt, please. Go ahead, Ms. Roberts.
Your Honor, again, there's competing, you're ruling on the issue of jurisdiction. There are discrepancies in the filing. And so, again, I'm just trying to determine whether or not there was some event that transpired on
No,
when the
nothing.
Ma'am, you need to sit quietly while I'm considering an objection.
as to if there was some event that transpired, whether there was a second marriage, a divorce, anything. It's just informational and as far as establishing a
And
basis.
the question about whether or not the accuracy of the California complaint goes to what issue?
Well, truthfulness and veracity of Mr. Knopfsinger, who has already testified. You have to make a determination. Some of the things, you've heard Mr. Knopfsinger's testimony and his demeanor and his actions in testifying before this court that Your Honor can take into consideration in determining the credibility of a witness, and that's it.
All right. Your objection is to relevance. I'm going to overrule the objection because of the fact that the part of the issue that I have to determine is the factual basis for jurisdiction, and the testimony of both of the parties would be subject to examination and cross-examination, and any discrepancies in anything that they may have been in error in would go to the accuracy of that person's testimony, so I will allow it for that limited purpose only.
So again, ma'am, did y'all have a solemnization of your marriage in September of 2004, did you? A
Object to
marriage
vague.
license?
Yes, I have a marriage license.
What is your objection?
Finalization of the marriage,
I'm
checked
sorry.
as to vague.
I'm sorry,
Now,
that
when you're
was,
going to make an objection, stand up before the
Certainly.
court and raise your objection and state the basis for it legally. Ms. Roberts, you may rephrase your question. I'll sustain the objection in its present form.
did you solemnize your marriage? That mean go through some type of ceremony, do something on September 4th of 2004?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you and your husband ever divorced after that?
No, ma'am.
Did y'all go through another ceremony or do something on January 8th of 2014?
No, ma'am.
On January 8th of 2014, where were you and he living?
In Elgin, Illinois.
In 2004, where were y'all living?
In Elgin, Illinois.
And so from when y'all were married, you were living in Illinois,
Correct.
and did y'all ever move from there?
We moved to Tennessee.
Okay, and when did you move to Tennessee?
I moved in 2020.
Did he move prior to that?
He came down in 2018, and he worked in the office in Nashville. He traveled extensively, probably 300 days a year,
Okay.
and he would come back to Elgin. And then sometimes he'd stay here if he had to work in the office.
And did y'all purchase property here in the state of Tennessee?
We did.
Did you purchase, how many pieces of property did you purchase in the state?
We purchased 3, one in Cumberland Furnace, one in Charlotte, and one in Buchanan.
I'm going to respectfully object to relevance. Happy to lodge a running objection. I don't see how this is relevant as to its truthfulness. We're getting into the bulk or the corners. We're getting into the weeds on this, Your Honor, if this is a jurisdictional issue.
Objection is to relevance.
Yes.
Okay. And this is an issue of the issue before the court is of residence and domicile, correct?
Yes, it is, Your Honor, but counsel has, my client admitted that he owns properties in Tennessee and he stated the years. I don't see how this is going to go to impeach him.
Her testimony isn't to impeach, it's our proof of jurisdiction.
That was the response I just received in opposition to my last objection as to going beyond the scope of this hearing.
Mr. Walker, this is their opportunity to present facts, just as your client was given an opportunity to present facts. You do not get to control what those facts are and whether or not they're considered to be for impeachment or not. It is their version of this background on this marriage, which the court finds to be extremely relevant on the issue of jurisdiction and domicile. What these parties intended as far as their residence and domicile also depends on many factors, but some of which include the permanency of their intended residence by the purchases of real property here in the state of Tennessee. So I find that it is, in fact, relevant and overrule your objection.
Purchased 3 properties, and you were talking about one was in Buchanan, Tennessee, and that's located in Henry County?
Yes, ma'am.
And then 2 in Dixon County?
Yes,
One in
ma'am.
Cumberland Furnace, one in Charlotte.
Right.
And do you know when those properties were purchased?
June 25th of 2018 was Cumberland Furnace. April 1st of 2020 for Charlotte, and March 21st of 2021 for Buchanan.
And when he moved down here in 2018, where did he live?
First in a hotel, and then he was looking for a house, so we bought a foreclosed house in Cumberland Furnace.
And y'all have since sold that property, is that correct?
Yes, we renovated it, we rented it, and then we sold it.
And do you know about when y'all did that?
December 27th of 2022. Correct.
And when you moved down here in 2020, did you move into a home?
We moved into the farm in Charlotte, correct.
And that's the property that you're living in now?
Correct.
Husband cohabitate and live there together?
Yes,
Where was he working at the time?
strictly effects.
And that's where you've heard his testimony, and is that where he is still working?
Yes,
And you heard him testify, and I believe the date, I may have gotten it wrong, but sometime was it 1998 that he began working?
no, December of 1999, he was hired.
Okay. Now, at some point in time, ma'am, well, let me ask you this, how old are you?
72.
Do you work anywhere?
No, ma'am.
Now, at some point in time, Mr. Knopfsinger, did he get relocated
He was,
for
yes,
his job?
he was going to California on a trial basis. And he told me he was making $250 a year and a $5,500 stipend.
Objection to relevance.
Overruled.
And when did y'all have that conversation?
First, the end of November of 2022, then December of 2022. And when he said he took the job, we had a bottle of champagne and rode on the cork because we were excited.
Was that a significant pay increase?
Yes,
Now, when you first married and you lived in Illinois, you said something, was he traveling?
all the time.
What type of job did he have then?
The same job.
Okay.
He
And-
does concerts. He does special effects.
Okay. And, so did y'all oftentimes, for long periods of time, live in separate places?
Yeah, he was on the road. I would go visit sometimes.
And was there a practice, if he was there, would he travel and be in one place for a long period of time or short periods of time?
No, he was on tour. He'd go from city to city, country to country,
And what did he do?
special effects
For concerts?
for concerts.
Okay. Were there occasions that you would travel with him?
I would meet him at times, yes, in certain cities.
And then what caused y'all to buy property here? I think you may have said that did Special FX have a location in the state of Tennessee?
The company decided to get out of Illinois due to taxes, and they opened a warehouse here and an office in Nashville by the airport.
And when y'all moved here, did he continue to travel?
Yes, ma'am.
And at some point in time, with his job with Special FX, you testified that he went to California.
Yes.
And you said, and when was that?
February of 2023.
And tell me y'all's flight plan, if you would. Did he get a place to stay out there permanently? Was he traveling out there? Tell me what was going on.
The company rented him a place to stay for 6 months.
Okay.
It was a pool house.
And did you visit? Did he visit?
I visited maybe twice. He always had an excuse of why I couldn't come.
Because he had testified that you came every month.
I did not.
Did you drive, and when you went, did you drive or fly?
I flew.
Did you hear his testimony where he said his company paid for you to travel?
They did.
So do you assume that there would be some record to establish whether you went every month like he testified?
Yes. Yes, there would be, but I did not go every month.
Okay. And again, was this for a period, how long a period? I mean, you said
Just
you
the
went-
weekend usually.
Do what?
Just for the weekend.
But if he went out there, you said in February of 2023,
Correct.
and he was there for 6 months?
It was to be a trial basis, correct?
So are you saying that you flew twice in 6 months?
Probably.
Okay. And at some point in time, was there discussion between you and him that his job was going to be permanent out there?
He never said that. He said that the lady who was in charge of human resources, Jennifer Reed, told him he could live anywhere in the country.
Sustain the
I
objection.
agree, Your Honor. I don't say what somebody else said. other
I'm
than
just
your
telling what
husband-
my husband told me, that
Listen-
he was told he could live anywhere in the country.
Okay, I didn't, my question to you, ma'am, I agree, it should be, I agree. I mean, listen to what I'm asking you.
Okay.
Did you and your husband ever discuss relocating to the state of California?
I told him I didn't want to live there.
Okay, didn't ask that question.
Okay.
Okay, listen to my question.
No,
Was
we
there a
did not.
discussion between you and him, whether it was, look, hey, I've got a great job out here, you need to come with me, or whatever, was there ever a discussion between you and him about moving to California permanently together first?
No,
Did he ever discuss with you that he was moving to California permanently?
no,
Did he come back to Tennessee?
he came back, I think, twice, or maybe more. He came to the office.
Okay. Did he ever come to visit you here at home?
Yes, he did.
Well, that's in Tennessee. So
Right.
how often would he come back and visit you
I,
here?
I think he came maybe 6 times.
Okay. Did he drive or did he fly?
Flew.
Now, at some point in time, ma'am, during that period of time, did y'all file taxes? He went out there February of 2023. Did y'all file taxes, which would have been in 2023? You would have filed them by April of 2024. Did y'all file a federal income tax or a California income tax?
Filed here in Tennessee.
What type? I asked you two. Did you file a federal income tax and a California income tax return?
No, we filed a federal tax because he was getting paid as if he lived in Tennessee in 2023 through his company.
You heard his testimony stating that he filed a California state tax return in 2023.
He got paid 1 week in California in December, the last pay period. In California, they made a mistake, he said. So I have the copy.
Ma'am, will there-
Can I have my water?
He said that there was a mistake in payroll, I think is what you were objecting to.
all right, you cannot repeat what somebody else told your husband because that would be secondhand hearsay.
That's what my husband told me, that there was a mistake in payroll at the
Well,
end
that's
of
not
December.
That's not repeating what someone else said. So
Right,
that-
that's what my husband told me.
All right,
He got paid as if he worked in Tennessee, all of
So my
2023.
question, did y'all file a joint tax return for
Yes, ma'am.
2023? Are you aware, one way or another, did you sign or file any California tax return with him?
I did not file, no California.
Are you aware whether he filed? He's testified he filed a 2023 California tax return. Do you know?
All I know is he filed a California tax return for state tax for 1 pay period from December 15th to December 31st of 2023. I can tell you the name of the accountant that did it,
Who was it?
Steve Wallach.
Mr. Wallach's located here in.
He's located in Dixon.
At some point in time, did you and he, did he purchase a car there?
He did purchase a car in California.
And where is that car, what kind of car is that?
It's a Mercedes
Where's that car registered?
in Tennessee,
Where is your automobile insurance?
in Tennessee,
You know the company through your automobile insurance?
Geico.
Okay. And did you or he ever notify your insurance carrier that the car was located in the state of California?
No, ma'am.
Did either one of you, to your knowledge, ever notify Geico that y'all were living, he was living in California and you were living here?
No, ma'am.
At any point in time, did you pack up in May of 2024, have a van and move some personal belongings to the state of California?
Yes, I did.
Tell me about that.
I wanted to go to try to save my marriage, but it didn't work out.
So in May of 2024, your intention was to move to California.
To try to save my marriage,
Okay.
not permanently, just to see if I could get my marriage to be saved.
But it is true that y'all put the house that you're living in right now and listed it with a real estate agent for sale, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Did that sale ever go through? Did anybody ever make an offer? Anything?
No, ma'am.
while you were in the state of California, did your marriage, and again, we don't have to get into the circumstances of it, did you determine that your marriage was broken?
Yes, and I told him August 20th, my intentions was to leave. He knew it. I gave him 21 days to fix his marital affairs, and he admitted to 3 women.
Objection.
Again, it's not going, it's just offered on to establish whether she permanently moved there and how long she was
Well, I
there.
think I'm going to sustain the objection as to the numerical quantity or whatever. She's already testified that she was intending to leave on a permanent basis.
And did you in fact leave?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever change your driver's license, your permanent residency, anything to California?
No, ma'am.
To your knowledge, we talked about the automobile. To your knowledge, does he have any other automobiles in the state of California other than the Mercedes?
No, ma'am.
Do y'all have other automobiles located here?
We do.
Are they insured under the same policy?
Only the truck is insured. The Mercedes was flooded, so it's useless. And then the BMW I don't drive, so that's just sitting there.
So you said only the truck is insured.
But
Is his vehicle a truck?
No, I have a farm truck here.
Yes, ma'am, but you just said only the truck is insured. Is his vehicle insured?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it insured on a policy that is joint between you and him?
No, he took himself off of my policy
And when was that?
in November 11th, I believe, when he
Filed for divorce.
filed for divorce, which can I state this? He knew I was coming here to file for divorce.
No.
And you know what
Objection.
Unless y'all had a discussion about it. You can't say
Okay.
speculation on what he
Sustain
knew or
the
didn't
objection.
know. No, okay?
Okay.
So did you talk to him and tell him that you were about to file for divorce here?
Yes, ma'am, I told him that when I was going to leave. I told him on December 6th to please leave.
December?
No, November 6th, he left the residency in California because he threatened my life. And I have a police report that's coming.
Objection.
Again, I don't,
Sustain.
it was outside the scope, I agree.
Okay,
Do I need to move the strike, Your Honor?
I agree.
Do I
It's
need to
not-
move the strike? Just asking a procedural
Well,
issue.
I'm the one who's deciding the case, and we don't have a court reporter, so I'll consider it to be stricken.
Thank you.
You advised him that you were leaving. At that point in time, when you were out there, were all of your vehicles still insured through the Tennessee insurance company?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. At that point in time, at some point, did you discover that he removed it and got insurance separate?
He told me.
He told you? Okay. And did you ever get served? Did you know when you left, did he tell you that he had filed?
No, he did not tell me he had filed for divorce.
What day did you leave California?
November 11th.
And what day did y'all leave Tennessee, packed up to move to California?
I thought it was May 25th
Why did you think it was May 20th?
because I thought that it's called UPAC that came to take the things. I believe they said they couldn't come to May 25th. I have it written down at home.
Okay, but again, there'll be a receipt for that.
Correct.
But sometime either before or, was it before Memorial Day?
It was before Memorial Day.
His testimony was y'all left on the 22nd and got there on the 25th.
Because the car was supposed to be returned on the 27th, which I believe was Memorial Day, but it couldn't be returned till the 28th.
Or y'all rented, or the van
A van,
that y'all rented to drive out?
correct.
And at that point in time, did you and he have any discussion about or change anything, driver's license, anything like that to the state of California?
No.
Did you have discussion with him after the filing of the divorce, or at the time of the filing of the divorce, in November of 2024? Do you know whether or not he held a valid Tennessee driver's license?
He did hold a valid Tennessee driver's license, and he changed it in December when he took off. He told me that.
In what context?
He spoke to me on the phone because he was speaking to me on the phone.
So change the license at the time of the filing change the insurance at the time of filing for divorce.
Correct.
Changed his license after the filing for divorce.
Correct.
Did you discuss filing of your 2024 taxes?
He said he wouldn't file them with me because he went on and called me a bunch of names. I'm not going to repeat what he said.
Do you know, and if you don't speculate or conjecture, do you know whether or not or any discussion with him, that he ever changed his payroll in the state of California to show that he was no longer a Tennessee resident?
I'm going to object to leading, Your Honor.
Your objection is to
Leading.
The witness, Your Honor.
Dane?
Do you know the status of his residency with his payroll company?
It's in California now. Now he does pay state taxes.
Do you know when that's happened?
What happened for the pay period, December 15th to December 31st of 2023. That's when it started, moving forward.
So all of 2024, his payroll was paid to him in California.
Correct.
You were aware he filed, I think, on the 12th of November in the state of California, correct? Were you ever served with those papers?
No, ma'am.
Are you aware that there's been a filing in the state of California saying you were served?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know what date that it said that you were served?
November 26th at 5:09 p.m.
And do you know where you were on November 26th at 5:09?
I was at a friend's house
In where?
in Cumberland Furnace. I was staying with her because we were going out, and then she was going to drive me to the airport because I was going to Chicago
So what day did you leave to go to Chicago?
on Thanksgiving Day. I don't know exactly what date that was.
Day after you stayed with your friend that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And again, did you ever receive any type of paperwork?
From
Did you serve by a process server?
never by a process server, no, ma'am.
Okay. At some point in time, when you left the state of California, did you take money out of a joint account?
I cashed the CD so I could repair the home that I had to live in because it was,
What had happened to the home?
he started to renovate it and he left it. Walls were down. There was no wall between the bathroom and a bedroom.
And at some point in time in September of 2024,
It was August 30th of 2023, or 2024, sorry.
2024.
For,
And did you have to fly back here to tend to it?
I flew back to meet an appraiser on September 17th.
That'd be an adjuster?
An adjuster, sorry, an insurance adjuster from the insurance company,
Who was your insurance company with?
American Modern.
And to your knowledge, on your insurance forms, where did you domicile? Where did you reside?
In Tennessee.
Did y'all ever notify that the house was vacant?
I believe I told her it was for sale.
Do you know whether they changed it from a homeowner's policy to a renter's policy or a vacant?
No, it was a homeowner's policy.
Okay. And did you make the repairs to the home after the tree fell on?
I did make the repairs to the home.
Utilize that money?
I used the money that I got from the insurance company.
Have you received any financial support from Mr. Knopfsinger?
No,
Objection. Relevance.
We're right now only on the issue of jurisdiction, so I'll sustain the objection.
That's all. Thank you, ma'am. They don't have questions.
Mr. Walker, you may cross-examine.
Yes, Your Honor, briefly, please. Good morning, Ms. Nussfinger.
Good morning.
Singer, sorry, hard name. My name is Justin Walker. So I believe you indicated earlier that you did, I don't think you said that you lived there, but you did reside in California for a time.
I did. I said I went there to save my marriage. To visit my husband,
That's what
more or
I'm asking.
less.
And when did you say that was again?
I believe we got there May 25th of 20,
And when did you leave?
November 11th.
And did you live with one another at that time?
We resided together. I don't know if we lived together. It was very volatile.
So you would say you called that place home at that time?
No, not really.
But were you there for a specific time frame? Not were you there, was it your original intent to be there for a specific time frame?
I went there to try to save my marriage, and it didn't work out. So I had no time frame.
So is it fair to
Knopfsinger, would you do me a favor? Pull the base of that microphone towards you just slightly so that, there you go. Thank you.
So is it fair to say that when you went to California on May 25th, it was your intent to stay there as long as it took to fix your marriage if possible?
I wanted to fix my marriage. I wanted to go marriage counselor. He refused.
Is the answer-
And then he just got more verbally abusive.
Is that a yes to my question?
Yes.
And then you said you left November 11th
Correct.
to go to Illinois?
No, Tennessee, where
Tennessee.
I live. I went to Buchanan. You could not live in Charlotte. There was a tree in the roof.
And when did you move to Charlotte again?
Middle December, when the roof was on and the front porch was completed. I think it was December 18th.
And when did you file your complaint here, approximately?
Well, I saw Ms. Roberts on December 3rd.
And when did you first learn of the California case?
I think it was the next day, December 4th, when somebody, the man who was working on my house, brought over the papers that he found on the porch.
And were those papers, they were court pleadings from California?
I-
Did it look like that?
It was it's a letter from Stephanie Hall, my husband's first attorney. They were all wet.
Okay.
And I just brought them over to Miss Roberts. I said, this is what was left on my porch.
And when did you file your complaint for divorce? Approximately?
I saw her December 3rd. I don't know what date she filed. You'd have to ask her.
Did you sign a complaint for divorce the next day?
I signed it on December 3rd.
The complaint? She did it with you in the office?
Correct.
And let me ask you this, Ms. Knopfsinger. I'm so sorry. Did you ever ask my client to file for divorce in California?
No,
Didn't.
no. I had no idea he was filing for divorce in California.
You never asked him to do so?
No, never. I told him I was coming to Tennessee to speak to an attorney. Speak to an attorney. That's all. He told me, maybe this is hearsay, he called 10 attorneys and they told him he couldn't get divorced in California until he found one who said he could. And then him and her had a falling out.
Okay. So I'm going to object as to the legal advice as hearsay within hearsay.
Abstain is non-responsive.
So, you, to be abundantly clear, you never called Mr. Knopfsinger and asked him to initiate divorce proceedings in
Oh,
California?
never. Why would I do that?
So it would be an impossibility that such voicemails and emails existed to the contrary?
He makes up fake things.
So it would be impossible to be true?
Yeah, yes.
And when did you move back to Charlotte?
I think well, I went to Chicago for Christmas, so it could have been after Christmas, maybe December 18th. I think maybe the house was done. I don't know. I'd have to go home and look at the dates, but I lived in Buchanan.
December 18th of 2024? This last year?
Correct.
Well, so you've indicated that cohabitated, at least with your husband in California from May 25th to November 11th.
I wasn't there all the time. I went to Chicago in August for almost a month, and then I came here in September.
Right, but you had said earlier that you were willing to stay there as long as it took to fix your marriage. That was your intent at the time.
I knew my marriage was over on August 20th when I found out on Facebook, someone said, "Oh, Reed
Objection,
Knopfsinger,
objection.
thank you for the
Please-
best
Please
birthday."
wait, there's an
ever."
objection.
You cannot repeat what someone else says, and you're volunteering information that you're not asked. You need to just listen to
Okay.
his question and answer that question directly. If there's anything additional that needs to be brought out, your lawyer can on redirect ask you the question to bring that out. But you're
Okay.
volunteering information that's not admissible.
Okay.
So listen to Mr. Walker's question, answer that question.
So, in fact, you shared a residence with your husband from May 25th to November 11th. That is what you were saying?
No,
That's not what you're saying. Okay. Well, help me understand. Because I believe you told me you ended up leaving in California on November 11th, right?
right, but I wasn't there all that time.
So maybe I'm not making myself clear. I had previously asked you, when you went out to California on May 25th, it was your intent to stay there as long as it took to fix your marriage, if that was possible.
Correct.
You said correct, okay. And then November 11th is the day that you left the residence in California for good, in your words, correct?
Correct.
Those were my questions. And where did you go on the 12th of November?
Stayed at a hotel.
Till when?
I got up and drove the next day. Then I stayed at a hotel. Then I drove on the 13th. I stayed at a hotel. And I stayed at a hotel on the 14th.
Okay. And what state were you in on the 12th?
Arizona.
13th?
I don't remember what states I went through.
Yeah.
Texas, maybe.
Texas. 14th?
Oklahoma or Missouri, I don't remember.
15th?
Then I got here.
And that was Buchanan,
I came to Charlotte first
the first, okay, on the 15th.
to look to see how everything was, and then I went to Buchanan to sleep.
The night of the 15th?
Correct, because there was no electricity in Charlotte. Because he turned it off.
So you woke up in your home here on the 15th in Buchanan?
Mm-hmm.
What'd you do out there?
I drove back to Charlotte.
And what did you do?
Picked up debris around my home, and I went back to Buchanan.
How long did you do that for?
A few hours.
Do you remember what you did the next day?
No, don't recall.
The following?
I don't recall.
Day after that?
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 Don't recall.
What about the day after that?
I don't recall. I have post-traumatic stress
Let
syndrome.
me ask you this, ma'am. You have post-traumatic stress syndrome, so you say. But you've also indicated that your husband flew here exactly 86 times.
I
But
didn't
you don't-
say 86 times. I said 6.
6. Okay, I'm sorry, I misheard you. You
I
seem
said
to-
I believe
You
6.
seem, no, I'm getting to my point. You seem to have an exact recollection of exact dates and times and what you were doing on dates and times. But PTSD has somehow, you had at least a 6-day gap after you got back in Charlotte supposedly to reside here permanently?
I lived in Buchanan.
Okay, Tennessee. I'll narrow the question. And then you just lost a week of memory after that?
I've lost a lot of weeks of memory due to the stress.
But you remember everything else perfectly from your memory?
I couldn't.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Robert, you have redirect. Thank you, ma'am. You may sit down. Robert, do you have any other proof? Do you have any proof, any rebuttal proof?
If the court would entertain me calling my client as to the scope of what she's testified to, I'd be happy to.
You want to put on your proof? I'll allow you to put on your proof. He's already been sworn.
Good morning to you, Mr. Knopfsinger. Can you hear me okay?
Morning. Yeah, I can hear you fine.
You heard the testimony that your wife gave a moment ago, correct?
Correct.
Does that sound accurate to you?
No.
Why not?
She's saying that she didn't live here, but we moved, we packed everything up, we listed the house for sale. I know that a tree fell on the home. I know it was tough to be there. I know she was there off and on dealing with different contractors and people. I did speak to a process server. He did tell me that he served her, that he asked if it was her, and he placed the documents on the
There's an
porch.
objection
Wait,
as
Mr.
to the
Knopfsinger.
hearsay, Mr.
And I-
Knopfsinger.
And I agree, Your Honor.
All right.
Ask that it be, ask Your Honor to disregard.
I will disregard it. Mr. Knopfsinger, you cannot, I've given your wife some instruction. I'll give you the same instruction. You
Yep.
cannot, by answering a question that your lawyer asked, start repeating what someone else has told you. That's a hearsay statement, and therefore I will not admit that.
Understood. Understood, sir.
So, Mr. Knopfsinger, it was stated that you are a liar. Are you a liar?
No.
Yeah, well, everyone tells lies. Is that a fair statement from time to time?
I'm sure everybody does, but I'm not lying
Have you
here.
lied? That was my next question.
Your Honor, and again, I'm going to object. He said, the objection when my client characterized him as lying was sustained. So, I mean, it
don't
wasn't, it's not in the record.
I don't think it was.
Ask that it be stricken. So, again, he's assuming facts not in evidence, Your Honor.
Well, and I would also point out, Your Honor, that I asked the question of whether or not a motion to strike was necessary for these proceedings and was told no.
Well, in this court's opinion, both of these parties are questioning the other one's recollection or truthfulness, and so I'm going to allow him to answer the question, overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. Have you lied to this court here today, Mr. Knopfsinger?
No.
Did your wife ever ask you to file for divorce?
My wife for the last 15 years has told me she was going to divorce me.
Well, let me ask you this. Did she ever leave you, how often, frequently, about how often has she called you over the last couple of months?
Oh, over 100 times.
Okay. She left you any voicemails?
At least 80.
And any of those, and are you being hyperbolic about that?
No, I have copies of all of them. I have not called. I've tried to be quiet, and
Do I have the bulk of those, sir? Or,
you do. You have the bulk of them. They have been sent to you. Yes.
in any of the voicemails that she left you, to the best of your knowledge and recollection, was she requesting that you file for divorce in California?
I don't think the state name was brought up, but she did request that I file for divorce. Yes.
Did she do it more than once?
Yes.
About how many times did she do that?
At least 8.
And then you did,
Yes.
and you filed,
Yes.
and you received, or your lawyer in California at that time received a return receipt on a summons that it had been
Objection,
served.
hearsay.
I'm asking if he received it. I'm not saying if he said he received it. I'm asking if he has firsthand knowledge.
No,
Service
he-
of process.
It-
Of course he would.
Excuse me, the question did not include, do you have firsthand knowledge?
Restate your question.
Certainly. Do you have firsthand knowledge that at some point a return of service was returned to your attorney in California indicating that your wife had been served with your complaint for divorce that she asked you to file out there multiple times? I think
Objection to the form of the question. There was no,
He's a
there was no,
he's a
there was
party
no
opponent.
there was no testimony that she asked him to file out there. To the contrary, Mr. Knopfsinger said she did not state where to file. And again, and I would object until he can qualify
I
what
can-
firsthand knowledge is. If I could
You
continue.
can, counsel, but I'm allowed to respond. That's the
You
nature.
When
are
I
allowed to
finish.
respond, but not while she's talking. If you would just wait till she finishes, I'll give you ample opportunity to
Certainly.
respond.
My objection is to form of the question, assuming facts not in evidence, number one, and then I would object, again, unless they can be qualified as to what the firsthand knowledge is before he answers the substantive question.
Number one, the question is a sustained, or the objection is sustained as to the form of your question because you phrased it that when, she asked you to file numerous times out there, and that's not what Mr. Knopfsinger testified to. He said she never mentioned the state. So that portion of your question is inappropriate, and therefore I sustain it. As to the question of his firsthand knowledge, you're going to have to lay a predicate as to how he has firsthand personal knowledge of the service without being simply told by someone that there was a service upon her.
Okay. I'll rephrase the service question. Mr. Knopfsinger, at some point, did it become your understanding that service had been completed?
Objection, calling for
Yes.
your conclusion.
I'm asking.
I have the paperwork.
Hold on just a second, Mr. Knopfsinger. Now you're asking a question as to whether or not it was his understanding, and I will allow that. It's his understanding, but the question of whether his understanding is correct or not, incorrect is going to be based on something someone told him. But as to his state of mind, I'll allow you to question him as to whether he understood it. So overrule the objection.
Please answer.
Yeah, I physically have the paperwork that says it was served from the process server. So does my attorney in California. And I believe it was sent to you as well.
And what date? What is your understanding the date service was effectuated is?
That I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to open that up in the folder and look for it.
Would you say that it was prior to her filing?
Yeah, it was definitely prior to her filing.
That's my question.
Yeah, I believe it was somewhere around the end of November-ish.
Non-response if he answers.
It was probably November 24th, 25th, I believe.
Hey, Mr. Knopfsinger, please stop. So your wife indicated that she moved out in May 25th, I believe she indicated, of 2024 to reside with you. Is that correct?
We left the 22nd of May to drive out here. I think we got here the 25th.
And did you live together during that time?
Yes.
What date did she last reside with you in California?
I believe it was November 10th.
Where did she go from there?
She drove back to Charlotte, Tennessee, to the best of my knowledge.
Is there anything else that your wife stated in her testimony that you know to be false?
I mean, my curiosity was just about if a piece of paper was found December 2nd, when did the porch get replaced? Because if he said he dropped it on the 25th, it would have been on a destroyed porch. So I was just curious about that.
I don't think how is that non-responsive, respectfully?
Well, you asked him a question that was an open-ended question, and that, in my opinion, was an improper question. So, now, number one, you asked him if there was anything else he wanted, and he's now hypothesizing about something that was unrelated to the question you asked.
Respectfully, I think my question was if there was anything else he wanted to clarify. I think before he was stopped, he was insinuating that maybe a porch didn't exist, that something was received on, which forms the basis of service of process receipt here.
Your Honor, the issue of service of process is one that neither, my client
We're
alleges.
still dealing with his questioning my ruling on it because of the fact that he doesn't believe that I've ruled properly on the objection. So let me address that issue first. Number one, you ask an open-ended question. Is there anything else you want to clarify? That is an open-ended question. It is not an appropriate question, which is a question which is asking him to make a specific answer to a question. And under these circumstances, it seems to me that that was the basis for my objection, or for my ruling on the objection, as being non-responsive, because he began to then talk about something that was unrelated to what had been talked about before that. That is the basis for my ruling, so that it's clarified for you, Mr. Walker. Now, you may ask him any other questions that you want.
Sure. Mr. Knopfsinger, is there anything else that your wife testified to earlier indicate, as it pertains to you, something you've done or said as being dishonest or untruthful that you would like to clarify at this time?
Yes, I did not threaten her with anything. I haven't bothered her in any way, shape, or form. I've tried to just keep the peace and mind my own business. So I'm feel like I'm being painted in a bad light.
Anything else?
I mean, we had intention on moving here. We looked at several different rental units. We looked at a couple houses to purchase. I mean, there was never a temporary intention of living here. It was always a permanent residency.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes, Your Honor. Sit down, please, and be quiet. You're losing your case. I'm not losing it. You are. Mr. Knopfsinger, I just want to ask, you concluded your redirect testimony with the statement that we had intention of moving here. That's what you said, correct?
Of moving to California?
Right.
Yeah, back in 2023 when I first moved here, yes, we talked about it and we had an intention of moving here, correct?
And again, and the intention, you got a job there that was paying more money. Same company.
Correct.
You moved out there and you went out there, and what she testified to, that it was a 6-month, you went out there to see if it was going to work out, correct?
Yeah, for 6 months, correct, yes.
And then y'all had intentions of moving out there to live as husband and wife, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And you started that, you came back here in May of 2024 to complete that process. Pack up your stuff and move. correct?
I was already living there. That was to complete her process, not my process.
My question, you had already been staying out there, working your job, had a rental place that they provided to you first.
Yeah, but that was for 4 months. That's all I was in that property.
That's what I said first, and then you signed a lease out there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then this statement, had intention of moving, that was supposed to, the conclusion of that started when you came back here in May, packed your stuff up, and moved her out there with you, correct?
Negative, no.
So when did that start? When we had intention?
I physically moved here in February of 23 for permanent residency, period. That's what I came out with the intention of doing when I physically moved here.
Well, see,
She moved out here in 2024. She did, not me. I was already here. I was residing here. I was already here.
Okay.
So yes, her moving, yes.
Connor, I would ask
She's
that you
emailing me to expedite the process.
and quit making a soliloquy.
Mr. Knopfsinger, you may answer the question, but then you're volunteering again additional information beyond what you were asked. So I would instruct you to please answer just the question you were asked.
So, Mr. Knopfsinger, when I said that you went out there for a temporary basis, you agreed with me at the beginning in 2023, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Do you have anything, Walker?
Mr. Knopfsinger, you've just been asked, I believe you gave two different answers. I would like to give you the opportunity to clarify. You said originally that you had moved out in February of 23 with the intent.
Yes.
Objection to the leading.
I'm refreshing his recollection of what he just said.
He didn't say he didn't remember.
And now I'm being talked over and it's not being pointed out.
Just don't lead the witness, sustain the objection.
In February of 2023, when you went, what was your intention when you came to California in February of 2023?
To stop touring and provide permanent residence here until I retired.
Thank you for answering my question.
Anything further?
If I could. Okay, he said that. Nothing further.
All right. We're going to break for lunch, and when I come back, I'm going to, over the lunch hour, do more than an hour. I'm going to do some legal research. I will allow you to submit any authorities you wish to on this issue. If you choose to do any research over the lunch break, we'll be back here at 1:30, and I'll hopefully I'll entertain your closing argument, and I'll give you my ruling.
Your Honor, I think as Your Honor has indicated, people can be domiciled in more than one location at a time. They can have dual residencies. So again, it really comes down to an issue. I think probably what we're looking at is California and Tennessee having what we would define as concurrent jurisdiction, possibly. And then you get to the point of, is there one court that has the superseding authority over the other? And as counsel has said, it's more like for lack of a better way to put it, a convenient forum. What is the most convenient forum to litigate these issues? You have a situation where Tennessee is a common law property state, and we are not a no-fault property. We are not a no-fault divorce state, and our division of assets is by
Now,
common
you
law.
made a statement, I'm not sure you're correct. You
Yeah.
said that Tennessee is a common law state, common law property state.
What I'm saying, number one, we are no-fault divorce. We are not a no-fault divorce state. California is a no-fault divorce state. Tennessee division of assets is based on the common law, which is an equitable division of assets. California is a community property state where it is just a 50-50 division. So you have different applications in what's going to happen, but what's undisputed, and again, my client is her basis of the argument is that her husband moved to California on a temporary basis to get a job. And he kept residency in the state of Tennessee. So he probably can be classified as a dual resident. But his intention was to remain a resident of the state of Tennessee as he registers his car here. Even though he says he's not registered to vote in his testimony, Tennessee is a motor voter state, so he technically is registered to vote in the state of Tennessee. His insurance is here. No testimony is that he disclosed to his insurance company that they had moved to the state of there. He had a driver's license, and again, his answer is when did you change your Tennessee driver's license? And his response is, I don't know, I don't know, I don't recall. My client testified. He told her. He did it in December after the filing. He changed the automobile insurance after the filing. All of those things that occurred because he was trying to make himself more of a resident of the state of California rather than the state of Tennessee. But all of that to be said is these people are property owners in the state of Tennessee. They are not property owners in the state of California. California can have personal jurisdiction over Mr. Knopfsinger. I do not think that they can have personal jurisdiction over Mrs. Knopfsinger because if she was not there to be served, she's not a resident. She hasn't established a residence there. And again, she would have had to been there for 6 months. And if you count the number of times based on the testimony that's before the court is she is 2 to 3 weeks shy of ever being a resident of the state of California. So the California court can order Mr. Knopfsinger himself, because they have personal jurisdiction over him, to do certain things as it relates to the property in Tennessee. But California has no authority over the property in the state of Tennessee. If they order Mr. Knopfsinger to sell the property or to pay the mortgage or to do anything like that, they can tell him to do that, but they don't have any in-rem jurisdiction over the property. So that's the controlling factor that I think the court needs to hang its hat on as far as jurisdiction is concerned, and superseding concurrent jurisdiction is the most convenient forum, if you would, is to do it here. Because you need jurisdiction over, in-rem jurisdiction over the property that's to be divided. And there is no property in the state of California. And so again, I think it's, as bluntly as I can put it, I do think that this is possibly a concurrent jurisdiction with California and Tennessee. And it comes to the point of whether or not who has the superseding authority to do it. And whether or not they both, if you both have jurisdiction and we both proceed with the divorce filing and the divorce, then again, we end up having competing orders. And again, as counsel said, then we're bound on an appeal to determine what that is. But I think it rests on the fact that these people own property here in the state of Tennessee. And as for that, I think the court has jurisdiction to proceed, because not only do you have personal jurisdiction over both of the parties, you have in-rem jurisdiction over the property.
You have the last say, Mr. Walker.
So, respectfully, Your Honor, I do have to disagree to the statement that someone can be domiciled in two places. In fact, I think Conley specifically indicates that someone can be a dual resident, however, they can only hang their hat in one place. My client here today...
You read the case in Conley. It does state that a person can have many residences, but only one domicile. That's quoting a Supreme Court decision.
Yes, Your Honor. And I think that my client has clearly indicated, and I think it's been failed to be rebutted, that he ever had any intention of changing his domicile to be Tennessee again. I agree that there is raised here, and that is probably a question of law. But whether or not, the California courts. So the crux of my argument is, sure, there is concurrent jurisdiction and there are battle of the forms. I think, pretty sure they're still teaching it in law school that the first to file is typically the one that sort of, we're not dealing with liens, but sort of perfects it, that would get the opportunity to rule on the issue. So the California court may very well indicate that Tennessee is the more convenient form, despite the fact that my client filed first, right? That's entirely possible. But I would say the first to file doctrine and Article 4, you know, I think it affords them that opportunity to make that determination. And I think that Tennessee courts would respect, you know, the same cooperation and deference from the state of California as well. So, I mean, to be sure, two places can have jurisdiction. As to whether or not California has jurisdiction is a question of California law. I think it's fairly clear from the evidence presented that my client is domiciled in California. And although there is raise here, I think it might be a little bit of a stretch to say there's nothing there. We get into property as far as, you know, funds earned working there. We didn't get into the bank accounts that are maintained. I don't believe I wasn't here for the first part of the hearing. But to say that all the property at issue is in Tennessee, I believe is not necessarily correct, to say respectfully. So for these reasons, I would ask that the court make its ruling on jurisdiction. I think it's going to do that anyway. But due to the first to file doctrine and Article 4, I think the California court should rule as well, and then the two courts should converse over what is the more convenient form. I don't know that it should be unilaterally done here today by a conclusion of law, just based upon a competing argument by one of the parties. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Over the lunch hour and a half, I guess I would say that I did do some further research in the matter, and I had cited the Conley versus Conley case, which is the basic premise that the parties can have more than one residence, but only one domicile. And then it gave a list of factors that, in the Conley case at least, were considered by the court to on the issue of what is the actual domicile of the parties. I want to address first and foremost Mr. Walker's argument about the prior pending suit and that theory, so forth. And I would cite to you the case of Vermillion versus Vermillion, which is a Tennessee Court of Appeals cited at 892 Southwest 2nd, 829, 1994 Court of Appeals decision for the Eastern Section. And in that, it was basically the argument of the defendant that there was a prior pending case in the state of South Carolina, and as a result of that, the same argument that Mr. Walker and his client make about this court should stop any proceedings here until after that case was concluded was considered by the court, the trial court, and the Court of Appeals. And I'm now quoting from that decision. I believe it's on page 832 that I'm reading from. The defendant's argument on the matter of subject matter jurisdiction is really an argument predicated on the doctrine of prior suit pending. He contends that this matter should not go forward in Tennessee because of the lawsuit in Texas was started, and I said South Carolina, but it was Texas. It was started first and is still pending. And then, but as the Ashley case, and they're referring to a Tennessee Supreme Court decision of Ashley versus Ashley, which is cited at 585 Southwest 2nd, 614, a Tennessee Appellate Court decision, 1978. But they're saying that Ashley case clearly indicates the concept of the, quote, race to the courthouse, end quote, is not critical to determining whether a state should exercise subject matter jurisdiction in a divorce case. And in the Ashley case, they cited with approval the following language from 24 Amjur Divorce and Separation. Quote, the pendency of an action for a divorce or separation in one state will not require abatement of an action for a divorce subsequently brought in another state. That's, again, quoted out of the Ashley case at page 620. Abatement of an action pending in this state because of an action pending in another state is a matter within the sound discretion of the trial court. So when I make this determination, we now know it's not a bar to this suit hearing it. And under the circumstances, then it falls to me to try to determine whether this court would be the appropriate forum, whether jurisdiction actually lies here. And I have to then refer to Tennessee Code, which sets forth the residency requirements for anyone to file a divorce complaint in the state of Tennessee. Tennessee Code 364104 sets forth the residency requirements, and subsection A states the following: a divorce may be granted for any of the causes referenced in 364101 if the acts complained of were committed while the plaintiff was a bona fide resident of the state, or this state, or if the acts complained of were committed out of this state and the plaintiff resided out of the state at the time, if the plaintiff or the defendant has resided in this state 6 months prior filing of the complaint. In other words, the residency requirement is that you reside and be a resident of the state for the 6 months preceding the filing of the complaint. And it goes on to make some other in a subsection from that. So it really boils down to whether or not the court finds that there was a residency by either the plaintiff or the defendant in this state at least 6 months prior to the filing of this complaint in this court. There's no question that the proof has established that Mr. Knopfsinger had relocated to the state of California. I do find that the evidence established that the parties were previously living, I think, in the state of Illinois and relocated in probably around 2020 to the state of Tennessee and then Dixon County. I think the evidence was that he came earlier, but she actually renovated or relocated and established a residency here in 2020. They acquired 3 parcels of real property. One was the home that they renovated and flipped and sold. The other was that the house that they were living in, and another one was a vacation or Lakehouse property in Henry County, Tennessee. Proof established that Mr. Knopfsinger was traveling extensively for his work, and that in 2023 rather, or thereabouts, he went to California on a trial basis to live in the state of California and see how that was going to work out. He may say it was intended that he always going to be there, but in any event, the initial travel to California was, according to what I found, to be on a trial basis. Mrs. Knopfsinger remained in the state of Tennessee and in Dixon County, and although she remained here, she would travel to visit him, and he would come back to Tennessee to visit her as well. The important parts of why I find that Tennessee has jurisdiction is, and why I believe that Mr. Knopfsinger has failed to establish that he established his domicile in the state of California, are as follows. The proof has been that he had a Tennessee driver's license. He couldn't remember when he changed the Tennessee driver's license to a California driver's license. It was in his wallet in his room that he was in. It would have been an easy matter for him to stand up, walk and get that license and come back and be able to demonstrate it to this court's satisfaction that he had had that license changed many months before this, before he filed for divorce. He didn't do that, and as a result of that, he couldn't remember when he had it changed. Mrs. Knopfsinger said he had a Tennessee driver's license up until after he filed for divorce. So I accept her testimony as being the factual basis for that. So he had a Tennessee driver's license in the state of California, and as we all know, there's a law that requires you to, in every state, to change your driver's license to the state that you're residing in if you move to that state within a certain period of time. I had to do it when I moved to Texas for law school. I had to do it again when I relocated back to Tennessee. Even though I lived in Texas, I came back home quite a bit during the 6 years I lived in Texas, but I still had the Texas driver's license until I actually moved to the state of Tennessee again, and then I got a Tennessee driver's license because the law required it. The same thing with this Mercedes-Benz that Mr. Knopfsinger drives in the state of California. His testimony is that it's registered even today with a Tennessee tag and a Tennessee registration. Anyone who has a Tennessee registration on their vehicle, you open that glove box and take it out to show a police officer who pulls you over. It will show your name and it will show your residence address. If you have a different residence address than that, you're required to change your registration on your vehicle and show that properly so that if you're pulled over. The fact that Mr. Knopfsinger did not change his registration on his vehicle and continued to get a Tennessee registration for a vehicle that he purchased in California and drove in California indicates again to me that his intention was never to establish, or at that time was not to establish, his domicile in the state of California. Because if he was intending to do that, then he was violating the laws regarding the registration of that vehicle. His reason that he gave for, in his testimony, for keeping the registration on these vehicles in the state of Tennessee was for insurance purposes. Well, guess what? If you obtain insurance on a vehicle claiming that you are driving it and residing in the state of Tennessee when you actually reside in the state of California, according to his argument, that is considered to be, in my opinion, possible insurance fraud. So if I find he's a resident of the state of California, I'm basically saying he's guilty of insurance fraud, and I'm not prepared to do that because I think he intended to keep Tennessee as his domicile so that he could maintain the insurance on the vehicle properly and so forth. And again, those registrations on both his vehicle and the vehicles that are here, the other 2 or 3 vehicles that they have here in the state of Tennessee are all in the state of Tennessee. The insurance is in the state of Tennessee and so forth. The other evidence that I'm finding as the basis for finding he had not intended to change his domicile was that the federal tax returns were for 22 and 23 were filed showing the residents to be in the state of Tennessee. And this court has viewed the testimony of the parties and I've judged their credibility as I would anyone else. And based upon my observations of their credibility and their testimony, I find that Mrs. Knopfsinger was at all times intending to maintain her residence and domicile in the state of Tennessee, and that Mr. Knopfsinger had failed to demonstrate by competent evidence that he intended to change his domicile to the state of California prior to May of 2024. And in May of 2024, when they loaded up and they moved back, perhaps was his intent to change his domicile to the state of California. And if that is the case, he's failed to establish domicile in the state of California for the requisite period of 6 months prior to filing this complaint. It would show that he had filed the complaint some 5 months and some odd weeks, but less than 6 months prior to the filing of that complaint. I find that Mrs. Knopfsinger never intended to change her residence, or domicile rather, to the state of California. That her testimony, and I credit that, was that she intended to go to California to try to salvage her marriage, and that she would stay there, but that the properties that they maintained here were still in Tennessee. They never listed their Lakehouse, according to what I'm understanding, and the house that was listed, that was here, was listed for sale but never sold, and she returned. Whatever the issues were, that she returned to the state of Tennessee in November the 10th by his testimony. November the 10th is when she left and intending to return to the state of Tennessee and resume her domicile here. For all of those reasons, and I've stated all of those reasons on the record so that it will be clear to the California court, and I intend to put an order down that would do that I believe that domicile of Mrs. Knopfsinger was clearly established to be the state of Tennessee, and that he failed to establish domicile in the state of California for the requisite period of 6 months. But beyond that, as the court stated in the Vermillion case that I've cited to you, there are factors that the court has to determine, in looking at which state has the better jurisdiction, which state is the more appropriate venue for this. And one of the factors that in the Vermillion court stated was that in that case, both the parties were living in Tennessee at the time that she filed her action. But the property to be divided by the court was in Tennessee. in the Vermillion case, and that was a factor that the court in Vermillion held was a basis for this court for jurisdiction for the state of Tennessee. In this case, the property that the parties own, the real property, which is the most significant aspect, at least is what I've been aware of from the testimony, was in the state of Tennessee. It's located here. As was pointed out, this court has in rem jurisdiction and personal jurisdiction over the parties. And as a result of that, I'm of the opinion that this is the appropriate venue and the appropriate case, court to have jurisdiction over these issues. I say all those on the record for the parties' benefit, as well as I will issue a written order pretty quickly about that. Now, having said that, it is my opinion that equity and the benefit of to avoid any sort of in the interest of judicial economy, that we need to reset your substantive motions until after this hearing in the court in California. What day is that hearing supposed to take place? The 28th of May? All right. Then, with the 28th of May being the date that that hearing is taking place, I can give you the 30th of May as a hearing date in this matter.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Walker, is that date available? That is not a regular chancery day, but I'm giving it. And that way we'll see one way or the other what the California court's doing. And
In Montgomery at 9 a.m.?
Montgomery County.
Montgomery County, yes, Your Honor, sorry, Clarksville. The court has an afternoon docket, that would certainly work.
I'm sorry, repeat that. You got to be in Montgomery County before I was looking at my calendar. What's the last thing?
Yes, Your Honor, I've got to be at Montgomery County for a Pedente Lida hearing at 9 a.m., but that's a quick drop down here if you wanted to do afternoon docket.
Well, I don't have a docket on that day. I'm giving you this day specially, so.
Well, if we could set it after lunchtime, I should certainly be able to make that.
1:30 on a Friday afternoon is, if depending on what they rule, we have to determine whether or not we're going to go forward with these motions. Ms. Roberts, you also have the Bates versus Bates case
Yes, Your Honor.
on the 16th of June.
The 16th and the 23rd are the two dates you set. We are close to resolving the property issues, so that will just leave us with the custody scenario. So I can't definitively say we've got that done, but we are very close in getting that done. I actually have a meeting with my client on Monday to hash out the final aspects of the property division.
Well, the property division is on the 23rd, according to what I have.
That's what I was saying is you have 2 days. And so it was the property that we were going to do the custody scenario first and then the property division after
Do
that.
you want to, your motions, do you want to set them on the 23rd?
My client is scheduled something to be out of town on the 23rd. Can we possibly, again, I know a 1:30 on a Friday afternoon, could we possibly have just a status hearing, even if we, on that day to see?
Yeah, we'll do it.
Because
1:30 on the 30th of May.
I want to make sure, because again, I don't know that the California court will rule that day. I'm not familiar with the practices there. I don't know if they'll take it under advisement. So again, I think if we can just do a status conference on that day, and then we can pick, then that way I'll know whether or not that Bates case is resolved, and then we can put it, and then we won't be double booking on the 23rd if it doesn't.
Well, is there any reason it has to be an in-person?
No, sir, I don't,
If you
that's what I'm
need
saying is,
to do it by Zoom, we can do your hearing, do the status. We're doing a status so that we try to find out what California court's done and then see where we are. Then we can do that on the 30th at 1:30, even by Zoom.
right, I think that would be fine, and like I said, if we get a ruling and we know counsel and I talk with their respective counsels in California on the 28th, and they say, this is what's happened, then we can just call the clerk and get a date and advise Your Honor that, hey, California's not going to hear it. If California is going to hear it, then we can discuss it at that point in time on what we need to do. But I think that would be appropriate, just to do the
Right.
status.
One thing that parties need to think about, and clearly, you can, if I rule that we have jurisdiction and California rules they have jurisdiction, then both sides are going to be ending up going up on the appellate
On an
ladder.
interlocutory.
And that's going to be costing both sides a considerable amount of money. So it may, I always like to quote this. You're too young to remember this, but there was a movie that had a great impact on my life when I was in high school called Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
I was gonna say
And
Jurassic Park.
there's a line from that movie that I always quote when they are followed by an all-star posse and they can't lose them, and then they find out, that every famous lawman in the West is in this posse. They say, he must be spending a fortune to make us stop robbing them. And Butch turns to Sundance and says, if they would just pay me the money they're paying to stop me from robbing them, I'd stop robbing them. And I always think about that when parties are litigating cases all the way up. And the principle of the matter is a great thing, but at some point you have to determine, is it more beneficial to you to try to resolve this case in some sort of informal and less expensive way than it is to litigate the issue of jurisdiction on a principles basis. But it is a decision that we'll reach when we get to it. I will put a written order down so that can be shared with the California court for whatever benefit they want to give it. They're not under any obligation to follow my ruling, as we all know, but we'll let them at least know the factual basis for my ruling.
Thank you, Your Honor.
That concludes this hearing. Therefore, we will stand adjourned.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor.
Thank you.
Okay, I have no money to pay the